Welcome to Just a Minute. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners around the world, but also to welcome to the programme four distinctive and talented individuals who are going to play Just a Minute. And they are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Pam Ayres, and seated on my left, Graham Norton and Kevin Eldon. Please welcome all four of them. And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject which I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me keep the score, and we're going to begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, an educational subject to begin with. The 11 plus. Tell us something about the 11 plus in this game starting now.
I remember doing reasonably well in 11 plus in the context of the school that I was attending at the time. I had no idea, however, that I was competing against the rest of the school children of that age, some who had gone to posher schools or perhaps even better.
Pam, challenge.
I think it might have been a repetition of school.
It was a repetition of schools. Well done,
Sorry,
Pam.
Paul.
It's fine.
Yes,
That's
I'm
fine.
not really.
So you're listening well, Pam? And you've got in after only 11 seconds. There are 49...
11 seconds, that's appropriate, isn't it? 11 seconds.
It was almost a repetition, but it doesn't really matter. There are 49 seconds available, Pam. The 11 plus starting now.
If only I had passed the 11 plus that day in Stamford-in-the-Vale Primary Church of England School with its oriel window and a headmistress who had great big feet which she used to clad in grey open-toed sandals. If only... No, I said that already.
Kevin, you've challenged.
I heard too many onlys there. So
Yes,
two onlys.
yes, and of course. And once you slip up, you hesitate as well. So, Kevin, you got in on the first round as well, which is good. And there are 32 seconds available. The 11 plus starting now.
Well, of course, the 11 plus is an examination which is taken in the last part of the primary part of education. Oh, dear me.
Graham, you challenged.
An excess of parts.
Yes.
So they're all going to speak on the first round. 11 plus, 26 seconds still available, Graham, starting now.
I grew up in the south of Ireland, but didn't do an 11 plus. How crazy. However, my mother, who grew up in the north of that country...
Paul challenged.
Repetition who grew up.
Yes.
You grew up in the same country as your mother. That's...
Different part of it, though.
Yeah, oh, well, that's not repetition.
So, Paul, a correct challenge. And you're back with you. 20 seconds still available. The 11 plus starting now.
In the film Spinal Tap, Nigel Tufnell shows off his amplifier, which goes all the way up to 11. A normal loudspeaker piece of equipment would go as far as 10. But this particular magnificent thing that I mentioned earlier... Another word for speaker.
Pam, you challenge.
I think it's deviation. I don't know what it's got to do with the 11 plus.
11 plus, it goes up to 11, so it's an amplifier, not 10, it's 11 plus.
Oh, OK. Well, all right.
Have stick to your guns. Stick to your guns. You only went to 11, not more than 11.
It was talking about amplifiers, and I thought we were talking
Yes,
about...
I think the 11 plus, we
examination.
assumed it was the exam you take at school.
Yes.
So I think he was, in that sense, deviating, Pam. So you got in with 2 seconds to go. The 11 plus, Pam, 2 seconds starting now.
Hesitation. I wish it was some other way.
It was
Paul,
a
what we'll
splutter.
do on that occasion, of course it wasn't hesitation, but because of your timing, the audience enjoyed it so much, we give you a bonus point. Pam, you get a point because you were interrupted, and you got 1.5 seconds on the 11 plus starting now.
The withy trees and the pond.
Well, that whistle tells us the 60 seconds have elapsed, and whoever is speaking at that point in this game gets an extra point. And on this occasion, it was Pam Ayres, and Pam is now equal in the lead with Paul Merton. Kevin Eldon and Graham Norton are trailing behind, which is obvious. And they're equal in second place. Right. Pam, we'd like you to begin the next round, and the subject is, very apt for you, Opportunity Knocks. And you start now.
Opportunity Knocks was a television talent show in the 1970s.
Kevin challenge.
Deviation, is that actually true?
Yes. It was on television.
I apologise.
Pam was in it.
I know
I
you're
was in it.
very
I was
young,
in it.
but
She was in it. Pam was on it.
she was in it.
On it, she won it several
She
times.
won it.
I only won it once.
Misjudged the mood of
You won it
conference.
loads, didn't you? You only won, but you kept coming back, didn't you?
I kept coming back for various sort
Why
of...
did they invite you back if you didn't win?
Because I was a good-looking woman.
Are we talking about historical sex allegations now?
So, Pam, a point for that, for an incorrect challenge, naturally, and opportunity knocks is with you still. 56 seconds starting now.
Hosted by a genial bloke by the name of Hughie Green, whose well-known catchphrase was, and I really mean that sincerely, folks, one notorious...
Paul Challenge.
Deviation wasn't. I really mean that most sincerely.
I'm always very fair in this thing. I gave it against you last time,
Yes.
gave the benefit of the doubt to Pam.
Look,
I think...
I knew him.
She knew him.
No, but I think he's right. It was most sincerely.
Was it?
Yes.
Well, no, sometimes he said most and sometimes he didn't.
Yes, I'm sure that's correct.
In fairness, we kind of have to believe Pam
Yeah,
on
we
this.
do. She was there.
So she was there. Pam, another point, 45 seconds. Opportunity knocks starting now.
A notorious element of the programme was an enormous clock-like contraption entitled the clapometer, alleged...
Paul Challenge.
Well, I don't think it was a clock-like contraption. I think it was a thing that moved along as an indicator of how many people had clapped. There wasn't any way you could tell the time from it.
No, but it was a clock. The description of it would be a rather clock-like thing.
Yes, it was. It was just like- it was- yes, it was, yeah.
circular.
Was
and
it?
And the thing went round
No,
like
didn't
that.
it go along the bottom of the screen?
That's what it was. Yeah.
There must have been two manifestations of it.
What are you all talking about?
No, it was
Give Kevin a bonus point. And Pam, another point to you. And you have 36 seconds. Opportunity knocks starting now.
Alleged to be a decibel meter which measured the loudness of the audience's applause, if any. I remember standing in front of the device and expressions varying from pleading, pathos, humiliation, etc., would flicker across the visage of the contestants. On my appearance, I declaimed the poem, Oh, I Wish I'd Looked After Me Teeth, a well-known postmodernist irony piece. And I can't...
Oh, Pam, I thought for a moment you're going to win opportunity knocks again. But Paul came in there first. Paul, your challenge?
A hesitation.
Of course. 5 seconds are still available. Opportunity knocks with you, Paul, starting now. Graham.
Well, it was a head. I'm sorry, it was a head.
Graham, you came in and you've got 4 seconds still. And a point, of course. Opportunity knocks starting now.
Not only Opportunity Knocks, but indeed all talent shows everywhere should have been banished after Dame...
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went. Gained that extra point. He's moved forward into third place. Pam is now in the lead, just ahead of Paul Merton. And Kevin Eldon, we're with you to begin. And the subject is being a punk. I don't know whether there's anything personal in this or not, but could you talk on the subject? 60 seconds starting now.
You'd perhaps think, looking at my hair, that I was a punk, but in fact what happened was I saw the ghost of Lord Reith just before I came on stage. He didn't look pleased, but then he never did. Anarchy in the UK, said the Sex Pistols in 1976. It was a very hard thing to do in Gosport, where I came from, to do anything anarchic. If you even wore an odd pair of socks, that would lead you to be burned at the stake for a witch. But I never had the spiky hair in those days or a rich...
Pam, challenge.
I'm afraid it's a repetition of hair, because you started off saying, looking at my hair, you
Right,
might not
yes.
think,
Right,
blah, blah.
okay, no, fair enough.
Well, listen, Pam. That's right. Yes, he did.
I'm so glad, because I can't wait to hear about Pam's punk past.
There are 31 seconds still available, Pam. Tell us something about being a punk starting now.
I have long favoured the look of the goth punk myself and have various intimate bodily piercings which I only show to a very, very...
One of the natural errors of just a minute. It's such a natural figure of speech. Paul, you challenge first.
A repetition of
very.
very, yes.
19 seconds, Paul. You tell us something about being a punk starting now.
The Sex Pistols first appeared on television towards the end of 1975, but it was the following year that it really took on as a fashion. They first met up in the King's Road, which was a shop which was owned by, I think...
Graham challenge.
A deviation. The King's Road isn't a shop.
No, it's not.
It's a road.
It's a road. Clues in its name.
It is a shop, actually. It sells very expensive tarmac.
Graham, correct challenge. 8 seconds on being a punk starting now.
I was a pretty child. I know it seems unlikely, but I was indeed that. So imagine my upset when I read magazines from London town.
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle when gained that extra point. He's moved forward. He's still in third place, but he's only 1 behind Paul Merton. Paul is 2 behind Pam Ayres, who's in the lead. And Graham, it's your turn to begin. Oh, here's a nice one. Wardrobe malfunction. Don't think there's any of it on this table. No. So would you please talk on the subject starting now?
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I blame flat pack furniture for the majority of wardrobe malfunctions. I recently bought a glossy white piece of carpentry to contain clothes. I can say wardrobe, I just remembered because it's on the subject. It was so difficult to build, I hired a man to put it together. Excellent. For a few weeks there, it was magic. You pressed it.
Pam challenge.
Well, I thought it was a hesitation.
It was a definite hesitation.
Was it? Oh,
Yes.
good. That's something of a relief.
Well, you have a point. You have 31 seconds, and you have wardrobe malfunction starting now.
My worst wardrobe malfunction came in the form of a pink dress with cut-out stars, which cost me a lot of money, which I wore to a posh do at the Guildhall in the presence of royalty. Unfortunately, however, on entering the venue, a terrific amount of static electricity surged through the pink frock, causing it to cling like a helter-skelter to the legs and buttocks, despite my best efforts to prise the thing off. It was a terrible...
Pam, that was a wonderful picture. And you kept going to the whistle. When you gained that extra point, you've increased your lead at the end of the round. And Paul, we're back with you to begin. Lift etiquette. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
I suppose the difficulty once you're inside a lift is the fact that there is very little floor space and you may be sharing it with a complete stranger who's got on another floor from the one that you have.
Graham challenge.
Repetition of floor.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Right, yes. So, Graham, we're with you. You've got 52 seconds. Can you tell us something about lift etiquette starting now?
I think the greatest dilemma with lift etiquette is the decision whether to break wind after you get in or just before you leave. I personally favour the exit strategy. As the doors close, you think, bye, everyone. Enjoy that. And they look at each other wondering, was it you? They never figure out it was the little gassy Irishman off the television who left with his reusable bags, because I'm quite eco-friendly in that way. Now, the other part of lift etiquette that, it bothers me, is that lovely moment twixt mother and child when they get into the lift, when it's such fun to press every single button. That is charming, isn't it? And they don't figure out for a second that, in fact, there is a barren, childless, aging bachelor.
So, Graham Norton, speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point as well. He's now in second place, 1 ahead of Paul and 2 or 3 behind Pam, our leader, and they're all just ahead of Kevin. Pam, this subject is interesting. The King of Skiffle. It's your turn to begin, so would you start off with that one? Tell us something about the subject in this game, starting now.
The King of Skiffle was undoubtedly Lonnie Donegan, who could afford, with his group, to play expensive instruments like guitar, banjo and double bass. But the great joy of Skiffle was that if you could not go out and buy these things yourself, you could make them. Yes, by using the contents of your mother's laundry, you could fix yourself up.
Kevin, challenge.
It'd be horrible. There were some cuds. There were 3 cuds.
Were there? Okay.
Yeah, is that unfair? Or...
No, it's not unfair. It's sharp.
No,
it's
it's
not
Sharp, but it's not unfair.
This is a...
I was interested to know how you could play it on your mother's laundry.
I was just about to
we
enlarge
did-
on that. You'll never know now.
I'm just imagining a brass solo. I don't know what that would sound like.
Never solo.
Kevin, a point. 38 seconds are still available, Kevin. The King of Skiffle starting now.
Well, the King of Skiffle must surely be George III. One of the manifestations of his madness would he'd lock himself away in a room for ages with thimbles on his fingers and scrape a washboard instead of looking after the situation with France. He'd much prefer, rather than take affairs of state to heart, to get a piece of wood...
Pam challenge.
I think this is deviation. I didn't know George III had anything to do with Skiffle.
This is why you learn on this game all the time.
I think it's Kevin's imagination going wild.
I see.
Oh, it's that, isn't it, again?
But it's not impossible. It's improbable, but not impossible.
Right, okay.
And so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Kevin.
Thank you, Nicholas.
So you have a point for an incorrect challenge. You have 19 seconds. The King of Skiffle starting now.
Also, he would get a piece of string and tie it to a stick and put it through a cardboard box and play the Rock Island line all night. That's why they had such problems with him. He didn't think that the people should be fed bread. Instead, he did...
Paul challenge.
Hesitation, sir.
That was a hesitation, yes. Anyway, Rock Island, well, that wasn't composed during George III's reign.
Wasn't it?
Nicholas knows these things.
Yes, but I was around at the time, that's right. I got in before they did on that one. So, Paul, correct challenge, and you have 5 seconds on the King of Skiffle starting now.
Does your chewing gum lose its flavour on the bedpost overnight with one of the many hits of Lonnie Donegan in...
So, pretty even in the scores. Pam is still in the lead. Paul had an extra point for speaking as the whistle went. He's moved forward. He's just behind Pam, one ahead of Graham, and they're all just a few ahead. No, Kevin's catching up, and Kevin, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Genie in a Bottle. And you're going to talk on the subject starting now.
What would I do if I was confronted with a genie in the bottle? The first thing I'd do is say, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, Graham challenge.
Oh, no, this is really... I don't know, this is like a horrible thing to do. I heard do twice and I buzzed. I feel awful.
Yeah, you should.
It's a significant word. It is a verb.
All right.
So it is correct, so I've got to be fair within the rules of just a minute.
Oh, I wish I was somewhere else.
Yeah. Breathe in the dust, Eldon.
Listen sharp, you'll get back in again. 55 seconds, Graham. Genie in a Bottle, starting now.
Genie in a Bottle was a hit for the grubby songstress Christina Aguilera. And you do think, never mind a genie in a bottle, why not try some soap in a bottle, Christina? Oh, I said Christina already.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of Christine.
Yes. Paul, a correct challenge, and you have 43 seconds left. And the subject, a genie in a bottle, starting now.
As I swam away from the shipwreck towards a desert island, I found myself fighting against the tide. The water, the briny sea shore liquid was in my ears and eyes. When I woke up on the beach several hours later, there was a bottle lying beside me. I took the cork out and drank the contents. This was a mistake. It was a genie. He was now in my stomach. He wanted to know if I had 3 wishes. The first one says, I don't want you to be in my stomach place anymore.
That was wonderful. You go into the world of fantasy and then you have to repeat it right. So, Graham, you challenge first.
Well, repetition of stomach.
That's the stomach, right. 16 seconds, and Genie in a Bottle, starting now, Graham.
In the 1970s, there was a super television series called I Dream of Genie, where a genie lived in a bottle. And Larry Hagman, who later became JR.
Kevin
So
challenge.
it's a bit late, but it was the 60s, not the 70s. I think I dreamed of Genie.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Hagman,
yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm calling you.
It was shown
That's
in the
made you seem
70s.
really old, Kevin.
Well, I am, you know, I am.
It was shown in the 70s, but it was made in the 60s.
Yeah.
We were in Ireland. We got it in the 90s.
And thought it was a documentary.
Yeah.
Give you the benefit of the doubt, Kevin. Have 8 seconds to tell us something about Genie in a Bottle, starting now.
Of course, you've got to be very careful what you wish for, so don't ask for a man-eating tiger. A lot of people think that they can fool the genie by making the third wish...
So Kevin Eldon was then speaking of the whistle went, has moved forward. He's a strong fourth position. And we're with Graham Norton to begin now. The history of Eurovision.
Oh.
Is that really the subject?
Yeah, that's really... The history of Eurovision, Graham, starting now.
Finally, a subject I know something about, nay, upon which I am an expert. Now, I won't bog you down with too many facts or figures. So let me begin by saying the Eurovision Song Contest began ages ago, somewhere in this continent. Now, the Eurovision area has expanded vastly in that period of time. I know this because last year I was chasing a hard-boiled goat's eye around a plate in Baku, capital of Azerbaijan. Euro, hello, I don't think so. However, this year we are back in Sweden. However, to take the shine off that, they couldn't host it in Stockholm. Oh, no. We're in Malmo, home of the who knows what. It's some sort of town, I suppose. It must have a venue, unless the whole thing...
Well, that doesn't often happen, and that round of applause confirms their appreciation of your talent, Graham. You started with the subject, you finished with the subject, you get a bonus point because you were not interrupted, and you have moved forward and taken the lead. One ahead of Ayres, two ahead of Paul Merton, three ahead of Kevin Eldon, and Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject is fur coat and no knickers. So try and talk on it if you can. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, clearly, if an individual has a fur coat and no knickers, they haven't planned their clothing budget accordingly. Because if you buy a fur coat, surely the underwear that could have been purchased for the very same price would have made sure that you could have walked around underneath this animal pelt without your skin being free to the air, having your bits dangling in the middle of the ocean. Why not?
Pam, challenge.
I don't know why his bits would be dangling in the ocean.
No,
What's the subject? I thought it was the history of Eurovision.
No, I think you've gone a bit too far, Paul, with your thing. The idea you've got the fur coat and the woman... And anyway, women don't have bits. It's men who have bits in, but they could wear a fur coat, couldn't they? But if you had a fur coat...
Are you saying that men can't wear knickers?
Now, what I'm saying is, if you
Do you wear knickers?
Yes, all the time.
Well, I wasn't expecting that answer.
That's why they sometimes call me Nicholas. And...
I'm trying to get that joke in for 45 series.
You are mean. Came straight off the top of my noddle then.
Exactly.
Right. The thing is, Paul, but the point I was trying to make is, if you were wearing a fur coat, whoever was, you would not walk into the ocean with it.
No, of course you
That
wouldn't.
seems like deviation.
It'd be insane.
Pam, you were the one who challenged first. 37 seconds. Fur coat and no knickers are starting now.
I imagine somebody in a fur coat and no knickers to be a brassy sort of woman, probably from the North Country, and probably married...
Paul challenged.
A repetition of probably.
Oh, yeah.
Probably from North Country
it
and
was.
probably.
Probably saved her from all the letters we're going to get. Yes. Paul, you got back in again on the subject with 28 seconds to go. Fur coat and no knickers starting now.
It means lots of flashy exterior, but no substance underneath. There's nothing there, nothing to tell anybody about.
Nothing there. Kevin challenged.
2-0.
Two nothings, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Kevin, fur coat and no knickers is with you. Not to wear, but to talk. 22 seconds available starting now.
If you wake up in the morning and you're wearing a fur coat but have no knickers on, that's the sign of a good night out. You may not actually remember what it was, but it'll come back to you in a series of flashbacks over the next month or so, which will increasingly cause you to blush more until you finally realise that you should, from now on, always leave the party when they're opening the 6th bottle of tequila. I think that you should make sure that...
So, Kevin Eldon with a huge surge there. It's pretty close. Kevin is trailing just a little behind Paul Merton. He's only 1 point ahead. No, 2 points ahead. And only 1 point ahead are our equal leaders, Graham Norton and Pam Ayres, as we go into the final round. And Pam, it's with you to begin. Other people's children. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Speaking as the woman who wrote the poem, Please Will You Take Your Children Home Before I Do Them In, I feel I am a tremendous expert on this subject. Other people's children's voices are never as mellifluous as those of our own. Neither are their sticky hands and faces so endearing. Their voices seem more grating to the parental ear. I used to make really good pizzas, homemade, and my kids loved them. But when other people's children came, they would meticulously pick off the sweet corn, the mushrooms, the bacon, the bits of mozzarella cheese.
Paul Jones.
Repetition. There's a lot of thers. The mushroom, the bacon.
It's there.
I'm sorry. I really don't know what I was thinking of. Sorry, I withdraw my challenge.
But Pam was interrupted, so she gets a point. And Pam, there are 22 seconds. Other people's children, starting now.
And I used to think if they were my children, I would not let them develop faddy ways like that. I can't think of anything else to say.
Graham, you challenged.
I felt hesitation.
You felt it.
I did.
It was a full stop.
So did I.
Graham, there are 14 seconds still available. You tell us something about other people's children, starting now.
I may have said this before, but not on this show, so I feel it isn't repetition. Children are a bit like farts. Yes, they are, in that people quite like their own.
And it's always best to leave one in the lift as you're leaving.
So, Paul, what was your challenge when the rules are just a minute?
I didn't have one.
Graham was interrupted. He gets a point for that. Paul gets a bonus point because we enjoyed his interruption. And there are 3 seconds still, Graham. Other people's children, starting now.
Other people's children are called things. I've noticed this because I listen. I have ears.
Right. I'll give you the point situation then. Kevin Eldon's only played it twice before. Came back, but he did very well. He finished in a very, very strong 4th place. Really. And then came Paul Merton, just ahead, with 11 points. But only 1 point ahead was the person who was leading most of the time, Pam Ayres. But 2 points ahead of her, with that last flourish, Graham Norton. So we say, Graham, you are our winner this week. So, it only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 intrepid players of the game, Paul Merton, Pam Ayres, Graham Norton and Kevin Eldon. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle so well, and we're grateful to our producer, Katie Tyrrell. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game, and we're grateful to this lovely audience here in the Radio Theatre. So from our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, goodbye, and tune in the same time when we take to the air and we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, but also to welcome to the programme 4 exciting, talented, amazing personalities who are going to display their ability with words and language as they try and speak on a subject they give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And those 4 are, seated on my right, Gyles Brandreth and Fred MacAulay, and seated on my left, Tony Hawkes and Roy Walker. Please welcome all 4 of them. And beside me sits Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me with the score. She'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from that wonderful city of Derry, Londonderry, or now, as the people here like to call it, legendary. And so they've welcomed us to their city, and of course this year it is now a city of culture, and that is going to be the first subject. And Gyles, we'd like you to begin, so could you say something without hesitation, repetition or deviation on a city of culture starting now.
Never mind a city of culture. This is the city of culture, so designated by the Department of Culture after fierce competition from other cities around the United Kingdom. This rose triumphant because of the sheer culture of its city. Look at the audience. Already you see intelligence and sexiness in every pair of eyes. I was...
Fred, you challenged.
Deviation, I can't see any intelligence, sexiness. I can't even see the audience.
Now, I think metaphorically he was doing that, and of course the audience loved it. So, Fred, we loved your interjection, so what we give you is a bonus point for that. Remember, Gyles was interrupted, so he gets a point for being interrupted. You keep the subject, and there are 38 seconds available. A city of culture, Gyles, starting now.
I was introduced to this city of culture many years ago in younger and happier days by an iconic Irish singer named Dana. She and I were very close and wandered together around the city of culture, not actually holding hands, but pinkies definitely touching. Her father had returned from King's Cross, London, to this very city in order to blow his trumpet in the Imperial Band. She introduced me to jazz, to rock, and to ancient music that has been played in the city of culture for millennia. It is also a spiritual haven, intellectual. Joyce Carey was born and lived in a house but 100 meters from where we are seated now. No city of culture.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Gyles Brandreth. So at the end of that round, he's got 2 points. Fred's got 1. The others are yet to score. And Fred, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject is a very topical one for everybody. Finding a parking space. Will you talk on that subject if you can? 60 seconds starting now.
I arrived in this city just a couple of hours ago and had no trouble finding a parking space. I saw 3 of them, one after the other, and my only regret was I didn't have my car with me. And I'd been brought into the city across what looked to me like a double-decker bridge. Could that be?
Gyles, yes?
Well, 2 possibilities there for repetition. One, if the bridge was a double-decker, there were 2 of them. But actually, he said the word city twice.
He did, yes. So he did repeat it. Gyles, you've got a correct challenge. You get a point for that. You take over the subject. 43 seconds. Finding a parking space starting now.
Finding a parking space here is always a challenge unless Dana is your companion, for she is the person who introduced me to the parking angel, that gorgeous creature
Right,
with
who
wings.
challenged? Tony challenged.
I just want him to stop talking about Dana. I mean, it's the beginning of the show. It could be a long night, really.
I'll tell you what, I'm fair to everybody. I gave Fred a bonus point because we enjoyed his interruption. We enjoyed yours, so you get a bonus point. Gyles was interrupted. He gets a point. 34 seconds are still available, Gyles. Finding a parking space starting now.
Eventually, we did find a parking space. Who put the lights out? I did, because her papa was wandering the streets with a torch.
Tony challenged.
Repetition of pa.
Papa actually is a word. You spell that P-A-P-A.
Oh, no, but that's the way the Italians say papa. The Irish say pa, don't they?
No.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Actually, it is spelled Papa, P-A-P-A. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if I can redress the balance later, Gyles, to you I will. 27 seconds of finding a parking space with you, Tony, starting now.
Some people think they can actually will themselves a parking place as they drive into town. I always hope that if they do, they're hit by a bus later in the day, because they used up all their psychic energies on something as trivial as that, when it would be far more important to do something about world peace or such like. However, I do not have these powers. I have to rely on my eyesight, which is tremendous, actually.
So, Tony Hawk will then speak as a whistle when gained that extra point for doing so. He's moved forward. He's 1 point behind our leader, Gyles Brandreth. Fred's got a point. Roy's yet to score. In fact, Roy's yet to speak, but he will speak now. And the subject now is an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. A standard format for jokes starting now.
An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. The Welsh fella must have been on holidays, but they were always the blunt of Frank Carson, the great Irish comedian's jokes. And he would all start them off with, we always thought to find an English joke. And he would say they were captured by the Germans, and the German officer said, "What's your last request before we shoot you?" And the Irish fella said, "I'd like to see the river dance once more, sir." And the English fella, and he said, "Try the Welsh fella first." The Welsh fella said, "The Tree Hockey Meal Voice Choir just once more singing, we'll keep a welcome in the hillsides." He said, "The Scots fella, what would you like?" He said, 100 pipers in kilts marching up and down playing Scotland the Brave." And the English fella said, "Would you shoot me first?"
Gyles.
Thank you for your generosity.
Yes, Gyles.
Repetition of Welsh.
Yes, 2 repetitions of Welsh, actually, but there we are. Well done, Roy. First time ever on the show.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there we are. So, Gyles, you've got in with 10 seconds to go. Got a point for a correct challenge. The subject is an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman, starting now.
An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman went into the bar. I was the Englishman, and I discovered there waiting for me the pop singer Lou Ditto and this beautiful little wee Scots lassie.
Tony challenge.
There is no pop singer called Lou Ditto.
Nicholas,
Yes?
if you gave him Papa as a legitimate repetition of Papa, when I get to Lulu, what do I have to do but say Lou Ditto to repeat the second part of our name?
You can do that as long as you don't say it's a pop singer.
Gyles, I'll be generous and say I did give Tony the benefit of the doubt on Papa.
Thank you.
And I think we knew what you intended. You didn't want to say Lulu, so you said Ditto. And anyway, there was only half a second to go. So, Gyles, we give you the benefit of the doubt. Half a second to go. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman, starting now.
Tony Blair, Martin McGuinness, and George Galloway walked into a...
So, Giles Brandreth speaking as a whistle when gained an extra point. He's now increased his lead at the end of the round. Tony Hawks were with you to begin, and the subject now is hitchhiking. Tell us something about that subject in this game, and your time starts now.
I'm delighted to be given the subject of hitchhiking because in 1997 I hitchhiked around the circumference of Ireland with a fridge to win a £100 bet. And I went on to write a book about it, so you would imagine, wouldn't you, that I would be able to speak for 1 minute on this subject. But there are people waiting at the sides to buzz me should I make any error. I take my hat off to the Irish people who showed me incredible hospitality, treated the little white good that I was carrying around with me like another human being. I would go in a bar, they'd say, put it on the stool, you can't leave it down there, let it have a drink with everybody else. And we christened...
All right. Fred.
Yeah, there was just a hint of a hesitation there.
Fred, you got in with 17 seconds to go on hitchhiking, starting now.
Tony Hawks has ruined hitchhiking for everybody in this island because I tried to hitchhike once. I didn't have a tumble dryer, a dishwasher, a microwave, a deep freeze. People were driving past me saying, look at that guy, he's practically naked trying to get from one place to another, and it puts a different slant in the word thumbing a lift.
So Fred MacAulay was then speaking as a whistle when gained an extra point. He's moved forward. Not very far, but he's moved. And he's equal with Tony Hawks in second place behind Gyles Brandreth. Roy is struggling just a little. And Gyles, we're back with you to begin. And the subject is a nice topical one for this part of the world, the Giant's Causeway. Tell us something about that wonderful tourist attraction in this country, starting now.
The Giant's Causeway, I went there with Twinkle, and she did. It was a glorious experience, moving from the City of Culture over to the Giant's Causeway, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where there are mighty stones arranged as steps for giants to walk upon, linking, according to mythology, Scotland with Ireland. The tale goes that a brace of giants many years ago took battle over this causeway. Finn was the name of the local boy, and his mother, or was it his wife, disguised him as a baby to terrify the fellow who had the funny accent from...
All right, Tony challenge.
What was there hesitation there?
There was a little hesitation, yes.
Can we clarify, really? You said, was it his mother or his wife that disguised him as a baby? More likely to have been the mother, I would think.
But in the myth, is it not the wife?
I-
It is the wife. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You see, this is the City of Culture, after all. They all know.
His wife. And was she a giant as well? She tried to disguise a giant as a baby.
Have you not been to Northern Ireland before?
I have.
They are all giants here, either intellectually or physically.
Gyles, you know how to win and influence your audience. Right. I mean, I may be being a bit harsh there, but, Tony, you have the benefit of the doubt. If I can redress it later to you, Gyles, I will. 18 seconds. You tell us something about the Giant's Causeway, Tony, starting now.
I went to the Giant's Causeway with Cher. And we had a lovely afternoon together. Lulu was very fed up that I'd picked her, in fact. And we darted across the stones. I was disguised as a baby. And my mother was not having any of it. She was furious.
So Tony Hawk, speaking as the whistle-weighing, gained that extra point. He's moved forward a little. He's trailing Gyles by 2 points, but he's 2 points ahead of Fred MacAulay and Roy Walker in that order. Roy, we're back with you to begin, and the subject now is Say What You See. I think you may have heard that phrase before.
Yes, I always answer it by saying, don't tempt me.
Right. Well, we're tempting you now, Roy, because you haven't been on the show before, and you have to give a little bit of temptation. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
A lifetime ago, 1985, I managed to get a game show to host it called Catchphrase, and I was fortunate enough to pick up a catchphrase while I was doing it. It was called Say What You See. And it seemed to explain to the viewers the meaning of computers. Well, no one in Britain had one in their house at that particular time, so graphics were new on the screen. And instead of saying to people, "Are you stupid? Are you thick?" I said, "Please."
Fred is challenged.
I feel really mean, Roy, because I know this is your first one, but twice we had RUs, a repetition of RUs.
Yeah.
And you had 7 pauses. But they were very generous and let you go. But we loved hearing from you, Roy.
Well, thank you.
And the audience loved it as well. And all your countrymen are out there, they're making sure you get a fair hearing.
Yes, and you'll get that bald-headed wee Scotsman afterwards. So
Fred, correct challenge. You have 29 seconds. Say what you see, starting now.
A rust-coloured V-neck jersey, a light blue collared shirt, a bald head, a pair of spectacles, black linoleum, a beautiful lady with blonde hair, a shawl collar round her neck, a man in a striped hooped jumper.
Gyles challenge.
Hesitation.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt on this
No,
one.
you're absolutely right.
Yes, because I've taken it away from you before, Gyles. You have 14 seconds. You take over the subject of Say What You See, starting now.
When the wonderful...
Tony.
There's only one E in when.
If I gave it to you on the other one, I have to take it away from you on that one, Gyles, and say, yes, when. We interpret that as hesitation. And Tony, you've got 13 seconds on Say What You See, starting now.
I don't know about Say What You See. A while ago, I could actually see what I could say. And I'd get up in the morning and I would say, James Bond girl in the shower. And what a wonderful...
So, Tony Hawk, speaking of the whistle, when gained an extra point. He's moving forward. Gyles is just ahead of him. Tony's just ahead of Fred. And they're all a little way ahead of Roy. Fred, we're back with you to begin. The subject, a lovely one, Whisky. Tell us something about that wonderful drink. And your 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I believe that whisky is spelt W-H-I-S-K-Y, whereas the Irish put an E in it, which probably accounts for some of the behaviour that goes on in a pub after they've all had a few. If you were to go into a bar over in the United States of America, for example, and ordered a whisky, you would get Irish for certain, because the Scottish one is called Scotch, and it can be one of the Islay malts, or perhaps from Speyside or Orkney. You could get a Glenfiddich, a Glenmorangie, and not...
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of Glen.
No, Gyles. It did repeat, but it's all one word, Glenn, and it's
So is Papa, so is Lulu. I'm catching on, Nicholas. I'm getting the idea.
I gave it to you on Papa, and it's whisky, and he's right. So, Fred, an incorrect challenge.
confused.
You've got 28 seconds still. Whisky is with you and may it stay with you. 28 seconds starting now.
It is a drink, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that I have never poured for myself in my own household. I refuse to have whiskey for myself because it is some...
Oh, Gyles' challenge.
Repetition of myself?
Yes.
Is it one word or two, I wonder?
There's no need to be bitter, Charles. 20 seconds still available with you, Gyles, starting now.
It was Monia Daniszewski, the great scriptwriter who wrote Whisky Galore, who introduced me to the famous last words of the fatted calf, "I see the young master has returned." This famous author had cats called Whisky, Gin, Soda and Tonic, a confusing quartet of little animals who were actually fed on the golden liquid that was poured into their bowls.
So Gyles Brandreth was then speaking as the whistle when gained that extra point, and he has moved forward and he's increasing his lead at the end of the round. Tony Hawks, we're with you to begin, and the subject now is complaining. That's the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
A while ago, the next table doors, but, well, hello.
Gyles, you challenge. What's your challenge? with the rules?
hesitation.
Yes, that's right. 57 seconds. Complaining's with you.
Did I go for a full 3 seconds?
Better than my 1 second.
57 seconds. Complaining starting now.
When I was a Member of Parliament, the one thing I could not stand were my constituents, because they were always complaining. I used to wear spectacles until I became an MP, but then it was impossible. As a result of meeting these complaining folk on a Friday night, I would turn up at the local club, pub, Royal British Legion, and there they would be, these miserable old so-and-sos with their complaints, lining up to tell me how dreadful the world was, pushing me towards the corner with a pint pot in one hand, sausage roll in the other, loose dentures in between, and the combination of the warm beer and the flaky pastry and the funny teeth meant that by the end of the night I could not see out of my glasses for the pastry mix on them.
Tony challenge.
Is it any wonder they didn't re-elect him?
So, Tony, we enjoy that so much. What I can only do is give you a bonus point for your interjection and your comment. Gyles, you were interrupted, so you get a point for that, and you have 15 seconds still available. Complaining starting now.
It was this complaining that drove me to go on a hitchhiking holiday with Bjork to Iceland. We had a whale of a time with beautiful people in that country who do not complain. They are grateful that the sun shines 24 hours a day during the summer and in the winter.
Tony challenge.
Well, it doesn't shine 24 hours a day, does it?
Excuse me, it does. On Midsummer Night's Day, the sun is visible 24 hours.
Visible, but is it shining?
Oh,
I think I will give you the benefit of the doubt on this occasion, Gyles, and say you've still got 2 seconds. It'd been mean to take it away with 2 seconds ago, wouldn't it? And you've got complaining starting now.
nobody ever complained about catchphrase, I can tell you that.
So Gyles Brandreth, speaking again as the whistle went, has increased his lead at the end of that round. And he's followed by Tony Hawks, and then Fred MacAulay, and then Roy Walker in that order. And Roy, we're back with you to begin. Irish dancing, 60 seconds starting now.
Irish dancing started in this great city of culture. The ballrooms were packed in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s with all sorts of people coming from all parts of the country just to get to the dance halls to hear the sensational show bands. And dancing was everywhere, which immediately formed into the famous river dance, which started out at Borderland, just across the road here from here. One night, 2,000 people showed up to see the great band Dickie Rockin' in Miami. And there was only one toilet working.
Carry on.
I'm sorry, but I'm a slow talker. I'm known as a slow talker. I was once nearly arrested for indecent composure.
Actually, I must explain to our listeners then that we were rather naughty. We all put our hands on the table and just let Roy go. Unfortunately, it didn't make any difference. He stopped. And who was the one who challenged first then? I've forgotten. Who was it Fred?
No, it wouldn't challenge
Oh,
Roy. That'd be mean.
Oh, do you know, I think Roy actually challenged himself.
I was thinking about it, yeah.
But actually, Tony, you pressed your buzzer, didn't you?
Yes, because he actually stopped completely.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to stop completely, Roy. It's best to go. Right. So you've got Irish dancing now, Tony, and the 20 seconds available starting now.
I often think Irish dancers are a bit like ducks because the top half looks very secure and calm, but underneath, going like fury.
Gyles Janet.
There was hesitation before he went like fury.
No, he's going to have the benefit of the doubt on this one. He may a minimal pause, but not a real pause there. And so, a benefit of the doubt to you, Tony. You have the subject still. 12 seconds. Irish dancing starting now.
Beauty of Irish dancing is you can drink as much as you like because it goes onto your tummy, but your legs are not affected fitness-wise. And I've seen some...
Gyles Janet.
The duck would sink. The analogy just doesn't work.
Gyles, could you explain to me what your challenge is?
Bitterness and revenge?
Yeah. I can see that written on your face, actually.
I know.
So, Tony, benefit of the doubt. Irish dancing's with you. And 2 seconds to go. Starting now.
I had a go at Irish dancing once. I absolutely loved it.
And I've just heard we're moving into the final round. You are lovely. In fourth place, trailing just a little, is Roy Walker, but he's never played it before. His contribution, we love having you here, Roy. And then it's Fred MacAulay, and then it's Giles Brandreth, who's now been overtaken by Tony Hawkes, who's 1 point ahead. So if you're interested in the points, it's all to play for. But I think the contributions are more important. But, Tony, it's your turn to begin.
That's quite clear, Nicholas.
And that's why we love having you on the show, Giles. A walled city, that's the subject, Tony. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I flew in from London to Belfast this morning and I've arrived at this wonderful walled city and already have walked around it and noticed that within those walls there are 2 pound lands and a pound world. And that is what...
Giles Jones.
2 pound lands, repetition of pound land, then there's a pound world.
I'll take you out there along the walled city. Pound land is 1 word and pound world is 2 words.
You're quite right on that one. It's not like Lulu and Ditto and other things we've had earlier on.
I'm so sorry. I walked around the walls. It was actually pound and. The L was missing. I thought there were 2 words.
Yeah, of course, Poundland is 1 word, isn't it? All right, I'll have to give you the benefit of the doubt and say 44 seconds still with you, Tony, starting now.
And I will spend the rest...
Giles.
Hesitation.
I gave a very harsh one against you, Giles, earlier on to Tony, so I'm now going to do the same thing and reverse it and give you the benefit of the doubt, Giles. So you've got 42 seconds on a wall. Yes.
Can I just suggest that Roy and I go for a pint?
Fred, the show wouldn't be the same without you.
I think you'll find it would.
Giles, 42 seconds on a walled city, starting now.
It was chasing Dana's pert bottom around this walled city that introduced me to the beauty of the London derriere. Oh, what fun we had, the pair of us, as we strode across the walled city, past Poundland, as it used to be called before the letters began to fall from its hand. City of Chester also is a walled city where I was the Member of Parliament briefly until the people spoke.
Yes, Roy, you buzzed.
Why? I was really interested in what he was saying. It's a slip of the thumb.
Well, he's deviation because he's now gone to Chester and got away from London.
Did it specify on the card? What does it say? Out of interest.
A walled city.
Chester is a walled city.
I know it is. I was trying to help Roy.
Oh, so sorry.
Right, Roy. We've only got 17 seconds left, and I think it would be very nice, as he is our Northern Ireland guest, to deliver him to take the last 17 seconds. And 17 seconds, Roy. A walled city starting now.
Well, this is a walled city, and it's very rare in our country, and what have you. It's one of the most famous of all the cities that we have here in the north of Ireland. And I've met many a young lady walking around the walls in the old days. That's where we did our courting.
So Roy Walker was then speaking as the whistle went, with a little bit of help from the chairman, and for 17 seconds he paused 7 times. But Roy, it was so lovely to hear from you. And in the final situation, you've actually managed to muster 3 points. Just ahead of you was Fred with far more than double that number, but equal in the lead with the two who battled it out incessantly, Gyles, Brandreth and Tony Hawks. So we say they are our joint winners this week. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and we'll want to tune in again at the same time when we play this amazing game. It only remains me to say thank you to our 4 fine players of the game, Gyles Brandreth, Fred MacAulay, Roy Walker and Tony Hawks. I thank Trudy Stevens, who helped me with the score, blown her whistle so delicately. We're grateful to Katie Tyrrell, our producer. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we are deeply indebted to this lovely audience from Derry, London, Derry, the legendary city, the city of culture, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From the audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team. Welcome to Just a Minute. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country but around the world, but to welcome 4 exciting, talented, dramatic players of this game. And they are seated on my right, Paul Merton and Richard Herring, and seated on my left, Gyles Brandreth and Russell Kane. Please welcome all 4 of them. As usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me is Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me keep the score. She will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we're going to begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, here's a good subject. Fast food. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
One of my favourite jokes when I was 10 years old is, what's yellow and white and travels at 85 miles an hour? The answer was a train driver's egg sandwich. I found this very amusing when I was that age. Obviously, as you get older, you find other jokes perhaps particularly more comical. But fast food started in this country as we know it with McDonald's around about 1975, who opened up their first restaurant in Woolwich in London, and the blanket advertising on television was immense. Anybody who remembers that period will recall there were just thousands of commercials aired every year across our television screens. And as a matter of principle, I said to myself, I shall never eat in that fast food burger restaurant, and I haven't up to this point ever consumed any of their food. I use that word loosely under legal advice because I believe that most of the product that come out of this esteemed mechanised factory is more than worthy of human consumption.
What a way to start the show, to take the first subject and go without hesitation, repetition, or deviation, not challenged once. And so, Paul, you get a point for speaking when the whistle went, and you also get another point for not being interrupted. And at the end of that round, you're the only one to have scored any points. Richard Herring, will you take the next round, or begin the next round? Oh, this is an interesting one. Booking a holiday. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
In days gone by, it was very hard to book a holiday. You had to leave the house, get a bus into town, go to the travel agents, Thomas Cook or whatever, make a queue behind all the other customers, wait till someone served you. They had to ring up the hotels, the train lines, the aeroplanes.
Gyles' challenge.
Hesitation.
I think that was, yes. He was teetering towards it and eventually achieved it. So, Gyles, that's a correct challenge. You get a point for that, of course. And there are 42 seconds left. Booking a holiday starting now.
Saga is advertising a 50 Shades of Grey cruise. And I was interested to see that the chief entertainment on this particular expedition is Nicholas Parsons. I thought the idea of seeing my old friend wielding a whip as I was on the ocean was something I would like to book a holiday for. But unfortunately, because it is in the Far East, a visa is required. Not only that, probably a license from the local authority to allow me at my age to see something as unsuitable as this gentleman doing his curious thing abroad. With
Paul challenge.
Oh, sadly, hesitation.
It was. I mean, sadly, I'm pleased he stopped. It's not true, you know. Somebody's making notes there to go and book up their holiday with him. Paul, a correct challenge. Another point to you for that. And you have 5 seconds booking a holiday starting now.
I remember thinking to myself one morning, I need to book a holiday. I disappeared out the front door, straight down the high street.
So Paul Merton was again speaking as the whistle went, again that extra point, and he's naturally in the lead ahead of all the others, and not difficult to work that one out. Russell, Kane, we come to you now. Would you like to begin the next round? A touch of class. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Given that I have a chip on my shoulder the size of a McCain's factory, there was no small degree of irony when my mum started a cleaning company called A Touch of Class, where she scrubbed the toilets of the rich. Class has affected me from the beginning. My dad is so archetypally working class that I have attempted to become middle class in a reaction to it. I've failed because I've got squashed vowels, and also I shop in Lidl.
There's a few hesitations in there.
There's a definite there, I'm afraid, yes.
But I've fallen off the skateboard now. Now I've got that graze, I feel more confident. The Savlon of failure.
And also, there was a lot of deviation because he's in no sense squashed. He's like a flower blossoming in bloom.
Well, I was going to germinate in the third part, but we just didn't get to it.
Giles, I'm getting a bit worried because last time Russell was on the show here, you flirted with him like this because you were also on the show.
And there's been enough scandals within the BBC over the last few...
We ended up on a saga holiday in Lebanon, actually.
That's a great challenge to you, Richard, and you have a touch of class. 38 seconds starting now.
I am a big fan of Mylene Class, who sang in the pop group Hearsay. She also does adverts for the shop Marks and Spencer's, and I would very much like a touch of class. I don't really mind if she does the touching or if I do the touch. It will all be...
Russell challenge.
There's a hesitation and
yes,
just went
he said touching.
I got a laugh, that's all that counts. That's all.
A correct challenge. You've got your first point, and you have 22 seconds still available. A touch of class starting now.
Maybe a touch of class is an affectation where you become obsessed with your own class. My dad was like that.
Giles challenge.
Repetition of dad.
Yep.
Yes, you mentioned your
nice
dad.
Nice one, Sigmund.
Giles, a point, and you've got him with 16 seconds to go. A touch of class starting now.
Lord Finchley tried to mend the electric light. It struck him dead and serve him right. It is the business of the wealthy man to give employment to the artisan. This essentially tells you what a touch of class is all about. Understanding one's position in society. Russell and I feel so at ease.
Charles Brandreth was then speaker at the whistle weighing again. That extra point. He's 1 point behind our leader, Paul Merton. The other two have a point each. And in third place, and Giles, we're with you to begin. And the subject is the voice of experience, starting now.
I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat. When my father was young, the voice of experience was exemplified by Sir Winston Churchill. But in my time, watching television as a boy in the 1950s and 60s, it was Tannock Bray that I went to for the voice of experience. Andrew Cruikshank as the doctor in the Finlay expedition about a medical man.
Russell, you challenge.
There was just a slight trip up on
There was.
rendition.
There was.
Did a little remix.
Yes. Russell, you had a correct challenge. You take over the subject. You have a point, of course, for that. 34 seconds are available. The voice of experience starting now.
The voice of experience at the moment, I suppose, in British culture could be Tom Jones, as he's on a programme called The Voice, and he has the most experience. For those of you who haven't watched it, it's a programme where...
Richard, challenge.
Repetition of programme?
Yes, you mentioned the word programme before, so Richard, well listened. You've got in with 24 seconds to go. The voice of experience starting now.
Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. The reason the voice of experience is annoying is because it's so smug. Also, it's useless because it may be a voice of experience, but it's going into the ear of inexperience, and young people will not listen to old persons of any kind.
There's a reason for that.
Russell, what was your challenge?
I think he hesitated on persons.
Yeah, there was a slight...
Can't do both.
Russell, you have 9 seconds still. Give us something more on the voice of experience starting now.
Often the voice of experience can be the most boring voice you could listen to. For example, if someone's been travelling, they said, hey, I've been on my gap year, I've been to Africa, I saw loads of brown...
Richard, challenge.
It was a repetition of bin.
Oh, yeah, I've been to Africa with this. Ooh.
OK. Gloves are up.
And you haven't made yourself popular, Richard. Because you got in with 1 second to go.
Evil.
But those are the rules of the game, always. Yeah. No. 1 second for you, Richard, on the voice of experience starting now.
My nephew Andrew is a very young man.
Right, so Richard Herring was then speaking. The whistle went. Gained that extra point. He's now equal with Paul in the lead, and the other two are equal in second place. And it's very close. We're back with you to begin, Paul. An interesting subject here. I'm sure you know a lot about it. Jumping the shark. 60 seconds starting now.
This was a phrase coined in the mid-1970s on American television. There was a show called Happy Days, and the lead character, the Fonz, in one particular programme, leapt over a shark that was in the ocean. The action was considered so preposterous that everybody talked about the ludicrousness of this storyline, and the show got talked about.
Gyles.
Repetition of show.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
you said there was a show in which the Fonz appeared. And Gyles, you were listening well. And you've got in with 41 seconds to go. Jumping the shark, starting now.
Jumping was for many years Chinatown's most notorious gangster. The shark, because when you went to his emporium, he served you shark fin soup that was poisoned and killed you. I heard about his appearance from the Duke of Edinburgh, who described it very graphically to me. I was an admirer of Jumping the Shark until I fell foul of his widow, the lovely willow lady who broke plates over my head in an attempt to murder me. Jumping the Shark was a vicious, vile, cruel creature who ruined London for all of us who knew him in those dark and desperate days. How I loathe Jumping. I'm sorry.
So George Brandreth was then speaking and going with great aplomb until the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and nobody had him for deviation. And mind you,
racism, to be fair.
He was in such full throttle, they didn't want to interrupt you, actually, Giles. And, Richard, we're back with you to begin. The subject is glad rags. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Glad rags is an odd term for what is meant to be your best clothes, because it sounds to me like something that would be kept by the bedside of a teenage boy. But it has been very popular in popular song. Bill Haley.
Paul Sanders.
A repetition of popular.
Yes, too popular.
Popular
yes.
in popular song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said it otherwise.
Yeah. No. So I'm not meant to say the same thing twice?
Not unless it's on the card.
OK, all right.
I'm just explaining the rules to our young friend.
Paul, there are 50 seconds still available. Tell us something about glad rags, starting now.
Glad rags, glad rags, glad rags, glad rags, glad rags, glad rags. These are some of my favourite things.
I think there was some hesitation in there, but also he was bending the rules of the game, I think, in a way that was unfair.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you anyway,
Thank you.
Richard. 43 seconds, Richard, on glad rags, starting now.
Put your glad rags on and join me, hun. We'll have real fun when the clock strikes one, were the lyrics to Bill Haley's famous song about rocking around a timepiece that came in about 1955. I think it was probably as annoying as Daft Punk's song is This Summer, That Summer, Summer.
Gyles.
Repetition of summer?
Yes, it was too
summer
much
was
summer
coming
there.
in.
And I was
Right.
going to talk about Donna Summer next, so it's lucky that he stopped me.
28 seconds are still available, Gyles. Glad Rags is with you, starting now.
Back in the day when I was known as Glad Rags Brandreth because of my attractive knitwear, little did I realize that one day I would visit the Victoria and Albert Museum and there find, alongside the costumes of David Bowie, a dark corridor in which there was a cupboard where poorly lit was one of my famous jumpers. This is as close as my Glad Rags are ever going to get to posterity. I used to wear Glad Rags to feel gay in the old-fashioned sense of that word. The more modern usage came to me...
Yes, so Giles Brandreth, speaking as a whistle win, gained that extra point. And he's leapt into the lead. He's 2 ahead of Paul Merton. And Richard Herring is equal in second place with Paul. Russell is 2 points behind them. Russell, we're with you to begin. And the subject is the Thames Estuary. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The Thames Estuary is an unfortunate place to grow up because you end up sounding like me. Your vowels are too long, sambuca, and your consonants are quite precise. It's not like the London accent, which has the integrity to be open on all counts. Open in the middle.
Oh, they're disappointing. Giles, your challenge.
Oh, I just love to hear him speak. It's marvellous, but unfortunately he repeated open.
It was a correct challenge. You have 46 seconds on the Thames Estuary, starting now.
The fog lay deep and dark. I turned to Holmes and said, "Down the Thames Estuary, what is happening tonight?" He said, "Watson, it's something quite mysterious and devilish. There is, I believe, a character called Jumping, who is there running an opium den." The Thames Estuary is full of mystery and excitement and people with exotic-sounding accents, which I find a bit of a turn-on, whichever part of the Thames Estuary they come from. They also usually belong to people who are rather gamin in their appearance, with coifs of hair lightly tinted gold in the middle. They turn out in the evening wearing nothing but a little shirt and a blouson.
Russell, you challenged half a second before the whistle.
I thought he'd deviated into me.
Yeah, it was the same kind of deviation there in the sense that the subject's the Thames Estuary, and you got onto Russell Kane, hadn't you, really?
Yeah. Well, because he was telling us that he was born and brought up on the Thames Estuary.
I know why you did it, Giles, but I'm just trying to help you.
That's what the police officer said. I know why you did it, Charles.
I tell you what I'll do. I think to be generous to you, we'll give you a point because I think it was a correct challenge. But, Giles, you were almost speaking as the whistle went, so you give you a point for that, a point to Russell Kane. That makes it fair, and we carry on. And, Giles, it's actually your turn to begin. The subject now is mediums. Tell us something about mediums, starting now.
I think you must be psychic, Nicholas, because at this very moment I happen to be channeling Napoleon. Bonsoir, messieurs, dames. I hear the voice. C'est moi, Bonaparte, qui vous parle. I gained this gift or insight, as it is, of being a medium many years ago at the feet of a man called Constantino Raudiva, one of the greatest of all mediums, who communicated with the dead in a most extraordinary manner. What was curious about him is that all those he contacted were terribly well known. It was either Winston Churchill or Joan of Arc, never any members of the Kane family. And they were the people that I was hoping to contact, or my old Oriental chum, Jumping. No line was there to root him. So I felt that this was not a medium rare, but mediums useless. Well, that was my verdict on this particular character. Mediums, of course, can be very helpful if you are suffering sadness and feeling very lonely because you are bereft, and you go to mediums.
Well, that doesn't often happen. 2 complete rounds uninterrupted in the same show. One from Paul Merton and now from Giles Brandreth. He went for 60 seconds without hesitation, repetition or deviation. He gets a point for doing that. Speaking of those, also went on a bonus point for not being interrupted. And at the end of the round, he's increased his lead over the other 3. And Paul, we're back with you to begin. And the subject now is the Wild West. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, I suppose I've been round here long enough to know it before it was called the Wild West. Just me and toothless old Joe, that's what they call me. But, you know, the gold mine down there, I was the first one to say there's nothing down there at all. But people say, hey, you're lying because my horse can smell that stuff. I said, you talking about the brown material that sends man insane for the favoured look of all the money it gives you? Yeah. And don't forget the painted ladies, they said to me as well. Not that I ever got close enough to one to get my brush out, but I knew what they were talking about. Meanwhile, on the other side of the pass, them Indians were getting pretty angry. They looked like me that they said to you from the Ronnie Corbett trial. I said, what the hell's that? I've never heard of you. I said, well, we're little big feet, and if you get anywhere close to us, we're going to take your scalp. I said, well, it's good enough for me. I ain't going nowhere near. And that day, I never have said anything against them because they're my best friends. And if this is more than a minute, I'm going to kill myself because I've been talking for a hell of a long time. I can't believe it.
Oh, that was a real tour de force. Oh, wonderful. And that's never happened before. 3 uninterrupted rounds in the same show. Wow. Fantastic.
Don't worry, Nicholas. It's not going to be 4.
So once again, Paul was speaking as a whistle went, gained the extra point for doing so, and the bonus point for not being interrupted. And he's in second place, behind Gyles, who's in the lead, and the other two are trailing a little in third and fourth place. And Richard Herring, we're back with you to begin. I don't know whether this is your scene or not, but it's cutting toenails. Something we all have to do from time to time. Cutting toenails is the subject, Richard. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
There's a time and a place for cutting toenails, and that location is definitely not on a train or any kind of public transport. I have seen someone attempting this to cut their toenails on a locomotive, moving along. They've taken off their shoe and their sock and put their foot up onto the table and got a pair of scissors and started snipping away. The problem is the toenails can fly off anywhere. They're like bits of shrapnel. They could go in your eye. You might go to hospital and the doctor will say, we can't operate, it's too close to his heart. We're going to have to let it stay in there, and then 20 years later you could die from a toenail through your aorta.
Yeah, in the show you can go with that sort of panache and style for 37 seconds, and you don't you get interrupted by Paul Merton. What was the challenge, Paul?
It was hesitation, sadly.
Yes, it was indeed. Right. Cutting toenails with you, Paul. 23 seconds available, starting now.
As you get older, the cutting of the toenail becomes more difficult. As a young child and a teenager, I remember cutting my toenails was a relatively easy task, but now I've reached the age of 107. It is now almost impossible to get the toenail to come away from the toe. This is because age has...
Thank God for that. Challenge, yes. Giles, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, you know, definitely.
You seem to have deviated away from a panel show to a sort of sketch show.
I'm auditioning for the Royal Shakespeare Company. They listen to this show, I'm auditioning.
Right. We're waiting for you to get in again, Paul, and see which character you'll do next.
Indeed.
But, Giles, you got in with 2 seconds to go. It doesn't make you popular with the audience.
No.
But it was a correct challenge.
Yes.
So you have the point, you have the subject. 2 seconds, cutting toenails starting now.
People who cut their toenails in the bath should really be arrested.
So Gyles has increased his lead at the end of the round. Paul's in a strong second place. And then we have Richard Herring and Russell Kane in that order. And Russell, we're back with you to begin. Letting the cat out of the bag. That is the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
I'll let the cat out of the bag by giving facts about my own cats that I live with, Keith and Wayne, who are my emotional sustenance when times are hard. I don't think you really have hit rock bottom until you've cried into your own cat. I will let the cat out of the bag with my personal life. To see your tears soak into another species, a particularly primal moment when the cat looks up at you and just says, "It's okay, master, soon we will rise again." It's entirely different to letting the dog out of the bag, which means absolutely nothing, but I wanted to set it up as an antipodal example of what it's not. Also, letting the cat out of the bag, I've taught my cat a few tricks, having so much time on my hands when I first started stand-up, so abysmally bad was I at stand-up that I had about one... Who'd have thought I'd stutter on the word stand up?
So, Richard.
Repetition of stand-up.
Yeah.
22 seconds are still available. You tell us something about letting the cat out of the bag, starting now.
I don't think we should be talking about letting the cat out of the bag. We should be discussing...
Paul challenge.
No, we should.
Okay.
It's a subject. If we do nothing else, we should be talking about that.
Yeah.
Deviation, isn't it, Nicholas?
Well, it's a very interesting challenge. And yes, in one sense, it is deviation.
Yes.
But he can say we shouldn't be talking about it, but let's get on and talk about it.
I was going to do that.
He may well have gone on to say that. You're absolutely right.
So what I'll have to do, Paul, we give you a bonus point because we enjoyed the quality of your challenge and interruption. But Richard was interrupted, so he gets a point for that. And he continues with letting the cat out of the bag. But don't talk about it in the reverse order, will you? And there are 20 seconds available starting now.
The question is who put the cat into the bag and why have no one let the cat out of the bag already? There's a cat in a bag. Let it go. It shouldn't be in there. What's going on? This is crazy. The worst place you can put a cat is in a bag. It's going to go insane. When it comes out, it's going to claw you in the face.
Paul challenge.
Oh, repetition is going to.
He's going to, yes. So, Paul, you got in on a correct challenge, of course. A point to you. 6 seconds, letting the cat out of the bag, starting now.
First, it must happen in total darkness. Make sure the library door is closed behind you. Move towards the bag.
So, Paul Merton speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point. And with others, he's gained in the round. He's creeping up on our leader, Gyles Brandreth. There's only 2 points between them, and 3 or 4 separate them from Richard Herring and Russell Kane in that order. As we move into the final round. You are a lovely audience. And Gyles, it's your turn to begin. The subject is an Eton mess. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
An Eton mess is a delicious dessert made of meringue, cream and strawberry, all crushed up and enjoyed. It is also a description of people who live in Downing Street and all went to the same school together and seem to have got things a little bit wrong. I like all these people, and I'm a little bit sorry that this Eton mess has now become a sort of cultural phenomenon, whereas in fact it was just something that was scrumptious and one enjoyed at a really good school.
Russell challenge.
Repetition of enjoyed.
That's right, you enjoyed it before,
enjoyed.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
33 seconds are still available. An Eton mess, starting now.
Eton mess is brilliant because when you're preparing a dessert, if it goes wrong, no matter what it is, a pavlova or meringue, you can simply hit it with a hammer and pretend that you've made an Eton mess. An Eton mess is camouflage for all your cooking failures. In fact, even a shepherd's pie gone wrong enough to be smashed with a hammer. Have cast... repetition of hammer.
There's repetition of hammer.
Yes, yeah, you're correct.
Yes, he did bring the hammer in too much, didn't he? They wanted to go on.
He isn't actually a cat. He's a human being. He's not a baby.
Richard, 16 seconds are
He's a
still
baby
available.
as far as this show's concerned.
Tell us something about an Eton mess, starting now.
The original Eton mess, it's rumoured, was made...
Paul challenge.
Well, it will deviate. All over the place, like he was eating one.
I was doing a character like you were doing. What's wrong? That was my...
Listen, I'm not
a character. It was a character of a man from Eton going...
I specialise in slurred characters.
Richard, we do interpret that as hesitation. Yeah. So, Paul, correct challenge. You have 13 seconds, an Eton mess, starting now.
Boris Johnson's hair could be described as an Eton mess. I've appeared on television programmes such as Have I Got News For You, and when he comes out of makeup, it's all beautifully combed, but then he appears in front of the cameras, and it's all over the place.
So it only remains me now to give you the final score. Russell Kane, who does so well and is so successful, but he did finish very powerful, very strong, 4th place. And actually, I must say, it wasn't 4th place. You were actually 3rd, and Richard was 2nd, because we have 2 out in the lead equal, which is extremely fair. Gyles Brandreth and Paul Merton have the same number of points, so we say they are our joint winners this week. So it remains for me to say thank you for these 4. talented and humorous players of the game, Paul Merton, Richard Herring, Russell Kane and Gyles Brandreth. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such delicacy when the 60 seconds had elapsed. We thank our producer, Katie Tyrrell, and we're deeply indebted to the creator of this amazing game, Ian Messiter. So from them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and a lovely audience here, tune in again at the same time when we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons. And as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners from around the world, but to welcome to the show 4 talented, humorous individuals who are going to speak for just a minute if they can on the subject I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And those 4 talented individuals are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Pam Ayres, and seated on my left, Graham Norton and Kevin Eldon. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Seated beside me is Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we'll start the show this week with Graham Norton. Who better? Graham, the subject is the leader of the pack. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Those who own dogs may be familiar with a man called César Millan, who lives in Los Angeles. And he's obsessed that if you own said hounds, you must be the leader.
Pam Challenge.
I don't know if it's valid or not, but a repetition of you.
Yes, it's correct.
Well, start as you mean to go on.
A bit sharp, Pam. We often get little things that so it was a correct challenge. We try to avoid them on the whole, Pam, but you haven't played it quite as much as the others. So generous to you. 47 seconds still available. Leader of the pack, starting now.
Leader of the pack reminds me of a famous song of the 1960s, sung, I believe, by the Shangri-Las, and glorifying a bloke on a motorbike who came to a sticky end. And the BBC banned the song because it was felt...
Paul Challenge.
Repetition of B.
Yes, somebody who's played the game a few times, yes. Correct challenge. Well spotted, Paul. You have 32 seconds. You take over and get a point across for a correct challenge. Leader of the pack, starting now.
One of the men who co-wrote the song died only in the last couple of weeks, and it was a big money spinner for him. It was following a pattern in the American charts where heroes of songs are being killed off before the end, or people came back from beyond the grave strumming a ukulele. They were called death tributes, and people would buy them in their thousands and millions. At a time of national despair, they would turn to entertainment, the rock and roll charts, and think to themselves, there's somebody worse off than me. Have you played the B-side? It's horrendous. And the leader of the pack would come out of the fog.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Paul Merton. So, Paul, you have taken the lead at the end of that round. In fact, you and Pam are the only ones to have scored. Kevin Eldon, will you begin the next round? A Kentish lad. 60 seconds starting now.
A Kentish Lad is actually the title of the autobiography of one of my heroes, Frank Muir, who used to tell everybody that everyone was a fruit and nutcase. He was a comedy writer who did a programme called Take It From Here, and his partner was Dennis Norton, who'd say, if you're one of those people who's reached the age where you think your idea of an idea...
What's your challenge?
No, it's fine. No, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Well, within
Can you disconnect this thing? It's not doing me any good.
Well,
I'll just sit back and listen with everybody else.
I think, no, as he was doing an impersonation...
Yes, exactly.
I think we'll be generous and say your impersonation was good. A bit over the top, but it was good. And, Kevin, an incorrect challenge. A Kentish lad is still with you. 36 seconds starting now.
Well, seeing as the impressions aren't going down so well, I should go on another tack. A Kentish lad. I come from Kent, therefore I am a Kentish lad rather than a laddish. I was actually born in the Medway towns, coming from Gillingham, and there is a differentiation between a Kentish lad and a man of Kent. And it is something like a Kentish lad was born on the east side of the Medway River.
Paul Challenge.
Oh, sorry, you hadn't quite repeated it yet. I was jumping ahead of you. So I buzzed just before you said Kentish man, so...
No, but he mentioned the Medway twice, didn't he?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh, right. We interpret that as an incorrect challenge, and you have 11 seconds, Kevin, on a Kentish lad starting now.
And the other...
Graham Challenge.
Repetition Medway. It's not rocket science, Nicholas.
I know, because I mentioned it before.
I know, and I was listening with my ears, and then I did say it with my mouth.
A correct challenge and a point to you. 10 seconds. A Kentish lad starting now.
Kent, of course, is known as the breadbasket of Europe, or maybe that's somewhere else. I don't really know.
Paul Challenge.
It's not known as the breadbasket of Europe.
No, it's not known as the breadbasket. It's called the Garden of England.
Wait, let me get a pen.
I only have to say that to justify my decision. So, Paul, that was a correct challenge, and you have 5 seconds to tell us something about a Kentish lad starting now.
As I stood...
Kevin Challenge.
I just wanted to irresponsibly use my buzzer. Everyone else has.
I feel better. Sorry.
So, what else do you want to say? It doesn't make sense within the rules of just a minute.
I love you.
Oh. I can't give you a point for sycophancy.
Are you sure?
You've done it before, Nicholas.
It depends who's doing it. Right, so what are we doing now? An incorrect challenge, Kevin. And Paul, a point to you. 4 seconds. A Kentish lad starting now.
Frank Muir wrote his book, and when he finished the final words, he handed them into his publisher.
So at the end of that round, Paul Merton was speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's now in the lead ahead of Kevin Eldon, and Pam Ayres and Graham Norton are equal in third place. And Pam, it's your turn to begin. We'd like you to take the subject of Singapore sling. 60 seconds are available, starting now.
One day, while walking down Orchard Road, Singapore, opposite the world-famous department store CK Tang, I tripped over and broke my arm. Upon arrival at the local hospital, the doctor diagnosed an impacted, compound and green stick fracture all in the same limb, and he suggested the use of a plaster of Paris cast and a sling. Another definition of a Singapore sling is a preposterously powerful alcoholic drink containing Benedictine, grenadine, vermouth, etc. But I like to make my own from scrumpy, beer and a pickled walnut on top, and nobody so far has ever asked for a top-up. As far as Singapore sling itself is concerned, this was perfected in the Luche, if that is indeed the correct way to pronounce it, days of Sir Stamford Raffles in the balmy heat of Singapore. I've run out of steam.
Right. So, Paul, you challenge.
I reached a natural conclusion.
So, Paul gets a point for a correct challenge, but we give Pam a bonus point because we enjoyed her remark there, which got a round of applause. All right? So, Paul. Oh, you run out of steam, and there was only half a second to go. So to be fair, within the rules of just a minute, yes. Paul did get in with half a second. So you've got half a second, Paul, on Singapore sling, starting now. Pam, challenge. Pam, you challenged after about 5 seconds. What was your reading?
No, I did not want to win by unfair means.
Give a bonus point for honour and integrity.
No, my challenge was hesitation.
It's too late now, Danny. I've given you the...
Okay.
You got the point anyway. Right. At the end of that round, Paul Merton's still in the lead, and he's 3 points ahead of Pam Ayres in second place, then Kevin Eldon, then Graham Norton in that order. And Paul Merton, it's your turn to begin. Ooh, the subject is walking a tightrope. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I should imagine it's one of the earliest of the circus skills to be developed, a big piece of wire or rope, as it traditionally looks like, pulled between two objects, and then the idea is you have to walk across. You curl each foot around the corresponding... What is it, rope?
Pam challenge.
I thought it was a bit of hesitation.
It was a hesitation, yes.
He did say, what is it?
Is it rope or wire?
A tightrope, yes.
Thank you.
But anyway, Pam, you've got him for a hesitation. And there are 45 seconds walking a tightrope, Pam, starting now.
Not wishing to advertise, but every summer I go to a circus called Gifford, where they have a really good tightrope walker who plays the fiddle while divesting himself of his trousers on the tightrope. And it is immediately obvious that he's wearing boxers with bright red spots. And he's very clever indeed, and is always very appealing to the people.
Paul challenge.
Hesitation.
There's a
Yes,
definite
it
on there.
was.
Right. So, Paul, you have the subject back. You have 22 seconds, walking a tightrope, starting now.
I believe you start off by traversing this particular fibrous material when it's about 2 foot off the ground. And if you can do that, you build up to a height where people can gasp at the magnificent bravado you show as you move along with your arms outstretched, your eyes taking a balance somewhere towards the centre of the big top. Beneath you, there are crowds of children craning their neck upwards.
So Paul Merton was then speaking as a whistle when, gained that extra point, has increased his lead at the end of that round over Pam Ayres, Kevin Eldon and Graham Norton in that order. And Graham, we're with you to begin. What? And the subject is Freudian slips. 60 seconds on that subject, starting now.
For instance, a Freudian slip might occur at dinner with myself and Nicholas, where I was to pass the bread basket and say, "Would you like a slice of man love?" Where I had revealed, of course, my deep gerontophilic attraction to Mr. Parsons. I can't help those feelings, and inevitably...
Paul challenge.
Try.
You are absolutely wicked. But Paul challenge, an incorrect challenge. Give him a bonus point because we enjoyed what he said. Graham, you were interrupted. You get a bonus point for that. Freudian slips. 37 seconds starting now.
Freud might blame an erotic encounter I had with a deck chair in my youth for my deep lust for Nicholas in one of those jackets. Because there's no denying, slightly reminiscent of said summer-based seating arrangement.
It's more than you think. On the back it says property of Littlehampton Borough Council.
Graham, I think that's very unfair because your jacket could well have coincided with a...
No, mine's a
deck chair.
tablecloth at best. Yours is a deck chair.
Yeah, it is a nice deck chair, but it does make a nice jacket.
Together
anyway.
we're a picnic. That's
So
what I'm
what is your challenge, Paul, within just a minute?
What was my challenge? Was it me that challenged?
I think I hesitated.
Yes.
Hesitation, I think there was probably.
No, he didn't hesitate.
No. He wants to give it to me.
Are you sure I didn't hesitate? I'm pretty sure I did.
All right, Paul.
He did repeat Nicholas as well. But...
I think he's giving it away, and 18 seconds are still available. Freudian slips, Paul, starting now.
I remember when I was deep into analysis, the psychiatrist said to me, "I am going to take you to a place beyond your human imagination." It ended up being Kidderminster. And we lived there for 3 weeks in a very happy bungalow, but then one day I realised he was listening to other people's dreams behind my back. I couldn't stand anymore. I reached for the knife, I plunged into his heart.
So Paul Merton was again speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point, has increased his lead ahead of all the other three. So we're back with you, Kevin Eldon, to begin. And the subject now, a lovely one, kippers. Tell us something about kippers in just a minute, starting now.
Cereal, muesli, fruit, toast, sir? No. I'd like a stinky old bit of fish that's been gutted and then hung up in the roof of a crofter's cottage above a smoky fire for 18 months. I'm not making it sound very appetising, am I? But in fact, they are absolutely delicious. What a great way to start the day. There are better ones, but I better not go into that. There are many disadvantages to kippers. Once you've cooked one, your kitchen will smell like Whitby Arbour for about 3 months. But the advantage is that they contain...
Graham challenge.
Repetition of months.
Yes.
Really? Oh,
yes, right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You go on to iPlayer. I think you'll find...
Well, listen, Graham. 29 seconds are available. Kippers starting now.
Oranges should be that colour, but no other foodstuff. It is wrong that something that swam in an ocean should end up being that shade. It is not something that's appetising. I know it smells nice, but at the same time, you shouldn't put it in your mouth, chew it, or indeed swallow it. Oh, the bones in a kipper. That's the subject. I can say it, right? Yeah, I can. So, kippers, maybe with an S, I'm not sure, can be consumed. I haven't said that before.
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went. Again, that extra point, he's leapt forward. He's equal with Pam Ayres in second place. Paul Merton still in the lead. Kevin is trailing a little. And Pam, it's your turn to begin. And the subject now is map reading. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I first learned about reading maps on Pavey Ark at Jack's Rake. Indeed, the reverse of that would be true. I've got it the wrong way round. When I fell madly in love with a mountaineer and I discovered that his idea of an invigorating walk did not necessarily correspond with my own. When we arrived at the Fowls, he gave me a silver compass and an ordnance survey map and directed me to a trigonometrical point in a hanging valley far away. He said, "Can you take a bearing?" What? I said, "No." He said, "Have you..."
Kevin, you challenge.
I had a few saids there.
There were two saids, yes.
Yes, it's
She was
true.
getting well into the story. Well, we were intrigued there, Pam. We wanted to know the payoff. Tell
I
us
never
after.
got to the crampons.
I've got a touch of the crampon sitting here.
No, very uncomfortable feeling, Pam. Right, Kevin, correct challenge? And you have map reading, and there are 24 seconds starting now.
I'm not very good at map reading, but I'm quite proficient at mop reading, whereby someone's fate is divined by the swirling patterns that they've left on the kitchen floor as they're cleaning it. Oh, don't take a train to Bournemouth. Beware of a tall, dark stranger. Orange will cause your death, Mrs. Hennigan.
Pam, challenge.
I think it's deviation. I'm not sure what it's got to do with reading maps.
Nor am I.
And
What's it got to do with reading maps, all this stuff on the kitchen
He's
floor?
reading mops.
Yes.
He's misunderstood for comic purposes.
And within the rules of just a minute, Pam, I think you have the benefit of the doubt.
Pardon?
So
I have what?
you have, well...
He's not a doctor, Pam. Don't listen to it.
You
look
have the
really worried.
benefit
I've got
of the...
what?
I've got the crampons.
The
Benefit of the doubt? Oh, no. My mother had benefit of the doubt.
What are you going on about? Are you just mocking me or enjoying yourself? No.
Never. Would you like a slice of man, love?
It's the
You're
slice bit I
outrageous.
can't understand.
It was a bread basket.
Oh, yes.
The bread basket. Right. Map reading, Pam. It's with you, and there are 4 seconds available, starting now.
I also studied map reading when I was a member of the Women's Royal...
So Pam Ayres was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's moved forward. She's in a strong second place behind Paul Merton, who's still in the lead. And Paul, we're back with you to begin. The subject is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
It's one of those sayings, maybe it's an Aesop's fable, I'm not sure, but the idea is that somebody disguises them something, but... Oh.
Graham, you challenge.
Well, he stopped.
He doesn't. He went very quiet.
It was very, very... I couldn't hear him. I could. I know I'm far away, but I couldn't hear him.
Had you stopped, Paul?
Yeah, I definitely stopped.
All right, good. I'm glad you told me, because I was blowing my nose at the time.
It's good to be able to multitask.
I tell our listeners everything, and not everything, but much as they want to know. Some things you can't reveal, can you?
I don't know, what are they?
Ask Graham Norton. Right, Graham.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I was blowing my nose.
It's all code between the two of you, is it?
Oh, I'm so bunged up.
Oh, I've been running all morning. I've gone through half a box of tissues just sitting here. You're making up your own stuff now.
No, I had a handkerchief up to the parson's nose and I didn't... Graham.
Yes?
There are 50... All right.
Right.
There are 53 seconds available.
53 seconds.
53 seconds.
You have the subject, a wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now.
Orienteering is something to do with map reading. That's the only thing I've known all evening. I thought I'd share it with you because I just wanted to seem a little bit clever for a second.
Paul challenge.
Deviation's got nothing to do with a wolf in sheep's
It's
clothing.
got nothing to do with a wolf.
Well listened.
Paul, you have a correct challenge. 46 seconds. You tell us something about a wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now.
There's one of those Warner Brothers cartoons where the wolf disguises himself as a sheep. He puts the pelt of one of the animals over himself and disappears into the flock, and then he realises he's there when he starts eating his fellow sheep around him. Although he's not actually one of them, but he's disguised.
Pam challenge.
I think there might have been a repetition of sheep.
No, he was one of them.
Oh, here we go.
He
again.
designed... No, you're right. He disguised himself as a sheep and he entered amongst the flock. No, he didn't repeat it, no.
OK, sorry.
Is it because it's sheeps and I repeated sheep? Is that what you're saying?
No, I thought I heard two sheep, but I was probably hearing things.
Perhaps you were trying to get to sleep. Like so many of us here.
Paul, wake us up. The subject is with you, a wolf in sheep's clothing, 32 seconds, starting now.
Suddenly, they looked round, they realised there was an intellectual...
Graham challenge.
livened you up.
Hesitate. Let's go with hesitation.
Yeah, hesitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have had him for la 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 la. 28 seconds, Graham. A wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now.
What an interesting linguistic mystery. Where did this phrase come from? Because it would never have actually happened. A wolf didn't actually kill a sheep, skin it.
Kevin challenge.
Very horrible. Two actuallys.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, Graham, but...
Kevin, 20 seconds with you now. For you now, and a wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now.
A wolf in sheep's clothing is a way of describing somebody who is actually quite dangerous, but is disguising themselves as somebody who's harmless. Oh, I'm thinking...
Paul challenge.
We get two somebodies.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yes.
11 seconds, Paul. A wolf in sheep's clothing with you, starting now.
The farmer looked down at the hill. He could see there was something wrong with his livestock. They were scattering this way.
Pam challenge.
There was a repetition of there was.
Yes, correct. Well done.
Gloves off now, isn't it? Really is.
Absolutely. 5 seconds only left, Pam, for a wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now.
Imagine the limpid eyes and soft voice and the lips.
I don't think we should, the way that was headed. Hesitation before we delved into deviancy.
Yeah, I was going to do the fangs, but I didn't.
The fangs of a
get there.
sheep?
Yeah.
No, the wolf.
Oh, the wolf. Oh, I see.
It's a pity you didn't say that because Paul's got in with only half a second to go. A wolf in sheep's clothing, starting now. Right. So at the end of that round, Paul Merton, speaking as a whistle went, yet again creased his lead. He's way ahead of Pam Ayres, Graham Norton and Kevin Eldon in that order. And Graham, we're back with you to begin, and the subject is 12 Good Men. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Coincidentally, 12 Good Men was going to be the name of my autobiography. But sadly, the publisher rejected it. It is also a reference to a jury. I believe I'm correct in saying that out loud in front of people sat in rows with clean hair. Well done, everybody. Now, a jury... Oh, I've said that before.
Kevin, you challenged.
Was that actually just a little bit of hesitation there? And
yeah, there was.
Repetition. The repetition I meant to say. I get those two mixed up. Yes, repetition.
Well listened. A bit of help from Graham, but you're correct. Kevin, 37 seconds available. 12 Good Men starting now.
12 Good Men is a fine sense of justice. I would prefer as a concept a dozen bad women. Think of the things you could get up to with them. Shoplifting you could go for a start. 3 of them could cause a cover. 5 could cause a description.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of cause, sadly.
Good cause, yes. So, Paul, you got in on this subject, and there are 22 seconds still available. 12 Good Men starting now.
As Jesus looked around the people at the table, he turned to each one of them as they spoke to him, and they said,
Pam challenge.
A hesitation.
There was a hesitation, yes. 14 seconds, Pam. 12 Good Men starting now.
I never wanted to be a member of a jury sitting listening to some impenetrable fraud case, for instance, which I could not understand, in a spifflicatingly hot jury room and unable to convince.
So Pam Ayres was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. She's moved forward a bit, but she's still trailing our leader, Paul Merton, but she's ahead of Kevin Eldon and Graham Norton. And we are moving into the final round. Oh, you are a lovely audience. You can come again. Right. Let me give you the situation now. Graham Norton, who won the last time these 4 were together, he's trailing a little, and no, he's in 3rd place, otherwise 4th place. Kevin Eldon's in 4th, but only 1 point behind. Pam, who gives such value whenever she appears, is in 2nd place. Our leader is still Paul Merton, and he's in a strong lead as we go into the final round. And Kevin, we're back with you to begin, and the subject is the village fete. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
The village fete is traditionally opened by a minor celebrity. The lesser known, the better. When I was a child, I recall at our village fete, a man came along who was the guest of honour who'd been a Dalek in an episode of Doctor Who. And he said, "Welcome to the fete! Don't forget to get your lottery tickets! All the money's going to charity! Exterminate the vicar with his message of love!" Well, that went down very well. Beside that, at a village fete, you must always beware of the bore who gets hold of the PA and microphone and imposes his tedious voice on everyone, stating the bleeding obvious. You can get some jam on the store, and there's some beer in the ale tent. Has anybody...
Pam challenge.
A repetition of some jam, some beer.
Some jam and some, yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's reasonable.
They wanted you to go on, but Pam, you got in there with a correct challenge. And 12 seconds, you tell us something about the village fete, starting now.
I always hated the village fete in our village because you...
Paul challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation.
Yeah, it was.
You tell us something about the village fete, Paul, and there are 9 seconds starting now.
Number 6 looked up at the green dome. His place in the village was secure. He wasn't sure why that fete this afternoon was going to be something he needed to attend to, but...
So Paul Merton was again speaker of the whistle when gained that extra point, has increased his lead. He gained the lead, he never lost it. So we say, Paul, you are the winner this week. So it only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 intrepid players of the game, Paul Merton, Pam Ayres, Graham Norton and Kevin Eldon. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped with the score, blown her whistle with such aplomb when the 60 seconds elapsed. We're grateful to our producer, Katie Tyrrell. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we're very grateful to this lovely audience sitting in front of us here in the Radio Theatre, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From the audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, thank you, goodbye, and tune in the next time we play Just a Minute! Yay! Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Nicholas Parsons. And as the minute waltz fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but around the world, but also to welcome to the show 4 exciting, dynamic personalities who are going to display their ability with words and language as they try and speak on the subject they give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 are, seated on my right, Gyles Brandreth and Fred MacAulay, and seated on my left, Tony Hawks and Roy Walker. Please welcome all 4 of them. Beside me sits Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me with the score, blow a whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from that wonderful city of culture. Yes, it's Derry, Londonderry, or as they know it now, legendary. So we begin the show this week with Fred MacAulay, and the subject is The One That Got Away. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Normally people talk about the one that got away when discussing fishing or angling, and it's about the size of the beast that they brought out of the water that would be yay big, which is
Charles challenge.
Hesitation.
Yeah, I'm afraid there was definite hesitation.
It was unbelievable, by the way.
Gyles, a correct challenge. Another point to you. There are 49 seconds still available. The One That Got Away, starting now.
The One That Got Away was a movie made in 1955 and starring Hardy Kruger, as I recall, Michael Goodliffe, Terence Alexander, Stratford Johns, and in the role of the little boy wearing the lederhosen, myself. It was a small part, and indeed you will not have enjoyed it because I was left on the editing floor. Humiliating, I agree. That has been my movie career. But
Roy challenged.
Oh, he said movie twice.
And that's right. Well, we know who the audience are with in this show, don't we? Right. Well, listen, Roy, that's what.
So, Roy, it's open season, is it?
Giles, I'm so shocked. I have no idea what the subject you were talking about was.
Right. Roy, correct challenge. Congratulations, and you got a point for that. 26 seconds are still available. The One That Got Away is starting now.
I remember being on a radio program with some comedians, and a late George Roper was telling a joke about a one-armed fisherman, and they were saying how large the catch was, and I kept looking at him and saying, it's a one-armed fisherman, you can't do that on the radio, it has to be on the television. And somebody interrupt, for God's sake.
Oh, Roy, you must come back again. Fred, you challenged first.
Yeah, it was an act of mercy.
Thank you.
But you should have kept going with only 2 seconds left.
2 seconds.
Yes. But Fred, it was a correct challenge, so you take over the subject 2 seconds ago. The One That Got Away, starting now.
The one that got away from me was a fair-skinned Irish girl, dark of hair.
So Fred MacAulay was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. And Roy, it's your turn to begin. The subject is throwing the hammer. You have 60 seconds. Throwing the hammer, starting now.
I come from a very tough district in Belfast. Hammer throwing was rife. Everybody was sort of throwing hammers and what have you. And the thing about becoming an international hammer thrower, which I did to represent this great country, people expect you to throw the hammer all the time. But they never ask you to walk their dog.
Keep going! Roy, I know you've only played the game once before, but the whole premise of Just a Minute is you have to keep going and wait for the laughter to die
I
down.
sacrificed the points for a laugh.
All right. And Tony, you challenge first. Hesitation, right. Tony, you have a correct challenge. 38 seconds. Throwing the hammer, starting now.
I'm not particularly good at DIY, and I tend to lose my temper when I take on some sort of task. Last week, I threw the hammer across the kitchen. It was an extraordinary event, and 3 people were killed. But I don't want to go into those details now because I'll get into trouble with the police, and we wouldn't want that to happen.
Giles challenge.
A little hesitation at the end, but the whole thing is deviation. The man is confessing to murder in front of us.
Manslaughter.
Now, I believe you intended to throw that hammer. You intended to kill those people. I've seen how ruthless you can be, Tony.
But, Gyles, you've mistaken this as a courtroom.
I think I should give you the benefit of the doubt, Gyles, because I don't believe that could
A
possibly
disgrace.
happen.
You admit to killing 3 people and look what happens to you.
19 seconds for you, Gyles, on throwing the hammer, starting now.
I think one of the reasons that the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh like having me at Balmoral during August is that I go to the Braemar Games, and unlike Cherie, I do not yawn while they are throwing the hammer. Indeed, when it comes to tossing the caber, I take part. Prince Philip said to me, "What a tosser you are, Gyles. The way you do this is quite extraordinary."
So, Giles Brandreth, who's then speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's now equal with Fred MacAulay in the lead. Tony Hawks comes there, and then Roy Walker. And Giles, we're back with you to start. The subject, the Titanic. Tell us something about the Titanic. There's so much to say about it, isn't there? 60 seconds will do without hesitation, repetition or deviation, starting now.
On the 14th of April 1912 at 10:40 in the evening, the RMS Titanic collided with an iceberg, and some 39 minutes plus 60 seconds later, it began...
Right, Roy, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes. You're picking up this game very quickly, Roy.
Thank you,
Right,
Nicholas.
yes.
You and me together, we can beat them.
There are still 45 seconds available, Roy. Will you tell us something about the Titanic starting now?
The Titanic was built in the great city of Belfast 100 years ago and sunk on...
Charles, challenge.
We're working as a team now. Hesitation.
Thank you, Giles.
He'd already told you when it was sunk a moment ago.
Yes, but he didn't say which day.
Charles, you have a correct challenge.
I think it was a Wednesday.
There was a lone clap in the audience there, which intrigued me. Right.
It's a relative. It's a relative of mine.
38 seconds, Giles. The Titanic starting now.
Neither of the films of the Titanic really did it justice. In the first movie, I was playing the part of the cabin boy. Again, the role was cut. I was...
No, you weren't.
Roy.
You weren't playing the role of the cabin boy.
Well, I was in the first one. You're thinking about in the second one, I agree. I was originally engaged as Leonardo DiCaprio's stunt double. But I didn't really quite pass muster.
Roy, you have a correct challenge. 25 seconds, the Titanic starting now.
Raising the Titanic was a movie made by Lord Grade, who said it was so expensive it would have been cheaper to lower the ocean.
You can't wait for your laughs in this game.
You can in my profession.
Tony, you challenge first. Hesitation.
Yes, I think we'll call that a hesitation.
Yes, a full stop. Hesitation. The Titanic is with you, Tony, starting now.
It's a little-known fact that the chief designer of the Titanic actually had a lisp, and he was describing the ship as unthinkable. But all the people thought he was saying something else in time. And look...
Just before you go on that subject about the Titanic, I loved Belfast City Hall. They had a big sign outside saying it was all right when it left us.
Right. So, Tony Hawks is speaking as the whistle. When gained that extra point, he's moved forward. He's one behind our joint leaders, Fred MacAulay and Gyles Brandreth. And Roy Walker is not very far behind him. No. Tony Hawks, it's your turn to begin. And the subject now is skateboarding. Have you done it? If not, can you talk on this subject? 60 seconds, starting now.
I just want to ask a question of the audience. You can give a cheer if you like. How many of you, when you said you were coming tonight and mentioned who was on the panel, had a member of the family excited thinking I was going to be Tony Hawk, the skateboarder? This is the...
Roy challenge.
Hesitation.
And it was the audience that was hesitating.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Roy. You haven't had one yet.
Oh, thank you.
Until
I haven't had any benefits.
I know.
It's a sore subject here. Yeah. Anyway, skateboarding.
Yeah, that's the subject, Roy. 45 seconds, skateboarding, starting now.
I have tried many sports in life. I played golf, I played tennis, I've gone fishing, I've gone running, I've done cycling, I've done this, I've done that, but I've never...
Tony challenge.
8 duns.
Roy,
No, we're not having that.
To speak to a Northern Ireland icon in that way. There were 3 duns, 2 plays, and 1 hesitation. But there were not 8 duns. I mean,
There were 2 gons. 2 gons.
indeed,
gons.
absolutely. We've got it right. I mean, it's appalling. Don't you agree, Nicholas? You invite somebody like Roy Walker, of his distinction, he's given us the crisps, he's given us the jokes. And then Tony Hawks comes along here and trashes the man.
Tony, a correct challenge. Skateboarding with you, 36 seconds starting now.
I mentioned this American king of skateboarding last time I spoke, so can't say his name again, but I get emails that come to my website that are meant for him, asking me how to do a 909 or an ollie or such like. And
Gyles challenge.
909, repetition of 9.
So, well, listen, Gyles, you have 22 seconds still available. Another point, of course, skateboarding starting now.
I once went fishing with the Nolan sisters, and the skate we boarded onto our craft was extraordinary. We fried the skate afterwards. Delicious it was.
Tony challenge.
repetition of skate.
Skate is on the
Is it not on the card?
Skateboarding is on the card.
Yeah, but that's
2
2
words.
words.
Skateboarding.
What, since when has skateboarding been 2 words?
We don't know how he is spelling it. He's speaking to us. Skateboarding
Well,
is what he
let's
said.
ask the audience. Is skateboarding 1 word?
Let's ask them again. Is skateboarding sometimes 2 words?
So the benefit of the doubt to you, Gyles. Skateboarding, 11 seconds starting now.
You should see me on my right leg aboard my skateboard. I slide through this walled city, up and down, thinking to myself, where are the gorgeous girls of which...
Right, so Gyles Brandreth is speaking as a whistle. Wayne gained that extra point. He's moved forward, but he's only 3 ahead. Fred MacAulay and Tony Hawks equal in 2nd place. And they're only 1 ahead of Roy Walker, who's in 3rd place. And Roy, we're back with you to begin. I don't know why this subject's been given to you. Maybe you can explain if you start talking. Boy sopranos. So, Roy, tell us something about boy sopranos starting now.
I started off life in show business when I was about 12. I used to sing in different churches and cathedrals. I came up to this great city to sing here in this great cathedral as well. And a boy soprano, I was sort of the Alan Jones of Belfast, and made recordings and sang at different functions and what have you. And then I took up hammer throwing and started to throw the hammer for my country, and one day I was really, really excited and I forgot to let go, and that's when I became a hammer thrower and a boy soprano for the 2nd time. I actually ran out of breath.
So what's your challenge, Gyles?
Well, sort of hesitation, but I realised it was the rhythm of the story. And also there were a couple of repetitions.
Yes, he repeated really, hammer, and...
almost everything.
And almost everything, yes, but we enjoyed it.
But he did it so well, and he is an icon.
Absolutely. So give him a bonus point.
I agree.
But Gyles, you had the correct challenge, and you have 24 seconds. Boy Sopranos starting now.
Boy Sopranos is rather like Endeavour or Young Sherlock. It's a prequel to The Sopranos. And in it, I play the part of the lovely child,
Fred Challenge.
Hesitation before we got to the lederhosen, thank goodness.
Fred, correct challenge. Right. 13 seconds are still available. You tell us something about Boy Sopranos starting now.
There is a way of ensuring that young men of teenage years can achieve high notes, and that is by medical surgery. I'm hesitating. I'm all over the place, just the very thought of it.
There were a couple of hesitations.
Yeah.
No wonder where he was going.
Yes. He was all sorts
I was wondering how you were going to get out of it without being rather too explicit.
I was going to finish by singing P.A. Jesu.
Right, give Fred a bonus point for why that last remark is worthy of that. Boy Sopranos, 4 seconds, starting now. Right. So, Tony, you've got an extra point for speaking as a whistle went. You're equal now with Fred in the lead. You're 2 points behind our leader, Gyles, Brandreth. And Fred, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is a Highland fling. 60 seconds starting now.
To woo the beautiful young ladies of this city of culture, the Irish gentlemen do a jig. In Scotland, we do a Highland fling. In England, they do Morris dancing, which has exactly the opposite effect. The best Highland fling I ever saw, though, was at the Braemar Gathering, when Gyles Brandreth threw the hammer.
Gyles, you challenge.
Well, it was hesitation.
It was the full
I'm afraid
stop,
I
wasn't
don't
it?
know why the picture clearly sort of flummoxed him.
Well, do you know what was... I had an image in my mind of the hammer going through the air, Gyles, and I was watching it and forgot to speak.
So you pause. So, Gyles, correct challenge. And there are 40 seconds still available. A Highland fling starting now.
A Highland Fling was the title of episode 2 of series 3 of Dr. Finlay's casebook, in which I played the part of Janet's wee nephew, Jock McGiles. It was an interesting role.
Roy, you challenged.
Hesitation.
No. But he did deviate. He never played the part in any of those Dr. Finlay case books.
He could have done.
He could have done, but he didn't. So, Roy, you listened so well, and you're getting so sharp on that buzzer of yours. Keep it in your hand, darling boy. It's a much better idea. And you have 27 seconds still available. A Highland fling starting now.
The Highland fling, well, it's a wonderful dance, and I do it at all the games in Scotland, and I need a breath.
Tony challenge.
He's not that enthusiastic about talking for a minute, is he?
No.
He did about 7 seconds and thought, I can't be asked.
But you're sitting next to him, so you get in first, Tony. Yeah. And you've got 19 seconds. Tell us something about a Highland fling starting now.
I once did some DIY in Inverness, and I'm not very good at this, and lost my temper and threw the hammer across the glens, which I suppose was a Highland fling, if you think about it in that way. I haven't got a kilt, but I did actually get a tablecloth that was tartan.
So it's all very close point-wise if you're interested. And Gyles, it's your turn to begin. And the subject now is a good limerick. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
There once was a man from Japan who said my limericks don't scan. When asked why it was, he said it's because I like to cram as many words as possible into the last line as I can. A good limerick is hard to find, ladies and gentlemen.
Tony challenged.
Repetition of can.
Oh, where?
Well, you do the limerick again and I'll tell you.
There was, what did I say? There was a young man from Japan whose limericks never did scan.
Uh-huh.
When he said why it was, he answered because I tried to get as many words as possible into the last line as I can. No repetition of can. No repetition of can.
Gyles, as you prove your case, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say you still have the subject. 45 seconds, a good limerick, starting now.
The limerick is furtive and mean. You must keep her in close quarantine, or she sinks to the slums and quickly becomes disgusting, revolting, obscene. This is why reciting limericks on the radio is so dangerous. How do you do it? Particularly, of course, Edward Lear's limericks, because they are ones where the last line repeats the first line.
Tony challenged.
And I always try and get as many right into the last line as I possibly can. Repetition of last line. You said it in the first time and you said it again now.
Well, listen, Tony. Very clever, very shrewd. A good limerick is with you, and 23 seconds starting now.
A good limerick tends to involve a double entendre, so I'll give you one.
Fred MacAulay chance.
Too long of a hesitation after
There was
giving
a hesitation,
you one.
yes.
I was doing Roy's trick. I was
So, Fred, you've got 16 seconds. You tell us something about a good limerick starting now.
An Englishman beside me called Gyles produced an abundance of smiles. He got laughs, he got titters, despite having the jitters, because he suffered greatly from piles of jokes that caused us to laugh out loud in this wonderful city here doing Just a Minute. That's the only limerick I got.
So, Fred, you were speaking of the whistle went. What's the situation as we move into the next round? It's so close. And even Roy Walker's got points there. And, Tony, it's your turn to begin. Music for the soul. A moment's thought, and off you go, starting now.
I'm absolutely huge in South Korea, and therefore, when I go to Seoul, they ask me to play music there, which would be making it music for the soul. A pathetic pun, but nonetheless, I'm pleased with it. I will tell you what is my favourite song, actually, from the 70s, which started, "Music was my first love, and it will be my last." John?
Fred, challenge.
Deviation from the tune?
I think you are right, Fred. Music for the soul is with you, Fred, and there are 33 seconds starting now.
They say that confession is good for the soul, but that's something I'm not particularly used to.
Gyles, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid, definitely.
I really wasn't expecting to get the subject.
Music for the soul is with you now, Gyles, and the 60 seconds. Tell us something about that musical which you were in. And starting now.
What Bob Marley was to tiles, I am to reggae. And when Tina Turner called up and said, "You are Ike with Spike, will you do a show with me?" I thought, yes, what's it going to be called? She said, "Music for the Soul." It's an underwater aqua show, and you will be playing a skate or a soul. I shall be the gorgeous mermaid on the...
Oh, Tony, challenge.
I don't think I'm allowed this, actually, but you'll tell me. Well, he said soul twice as spelt, S-O-L-E.
Oh, no, it's as it sounds on the
Is it
ear,
as it
not
sounds?
as it
Okay.
spelt, no.
So it was a valiant attempt. But
It was a valiant attempt.
But it doesn't count.
And there's only half a second to go.
Never mind. Well, let's see if he can manage half a second.
Well, shall we see if Roy can manage half a
yeah,
second?
okay.
Roy, you have half a second on Music for the Soul, starting now.
I don't know how Gyles could swing.
So Roy Walker somehow was speaking then as the whistle went. And he's still in fourth place, but he's a very strong fourth place there. And second place equal, Tony Hawks and Fred MacAulay, and 2 or 3 points ahead. In the lead is Gyles Brandreth. Roy, it's your turn to begin. The subject, a starched collar. 60 seconds starting now.
We lived in a rough district of Belfast. I lived with my grandparents. My grandfather was a wonderful man. I loved him dearly and what have you. He was what you call a posh bigot. He never really called people Catholics and Protestants or anything like that. He referred to Catholic people as them'uns, and he referred to Orange men as those'uns. And if he wasn't too sure, he used to say us'uns. And he worked in a Catholic area in Belfast in the Short Strand, and sometimes there was a lot of trouble and what have you, so he would have to get on his bicycle and go down to the works where he worked, which was the Sirocco Works, and he would have to go through a certain crowd and what have you, so he wore a starched collar. And what he would do is he would reverse the starch collar when he got into troubled areas and become Father O'Reilly.
Roy, you've challenged. What was your challenge?
I couldn't believe that story.
So you think it was deviation?
No, I'm happy to be fourth.
You have actually challenged yourself. Do you want hesitation?
Hesitation.
Well done. God, the way you listen in this show is amazing. You started with the subject, and you've still got only 6 seconds, so keep going to the whistle, a starched collar starting now.
My grandfather, dressed as a priest, would go among the poor, blessing them, listening to confessions. Just before he got to work, he would get in through the gate.
So Roy Walker was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and with generosity from the others, he has leapt forward. He's still in fourth place. Oh, we're moving into the final round, actually. You are so lovely. So Roy is 1 point behind our equal seconds. That's Tony Hawks and Fred MacAulay. 3 points ahead is Gyles Brandreth. And Fred, it's your turn to begin. It's being a late starter. Tell us about that subject in this game starting now.
Hard to believe, folks, but I was a late starter. As I said earlier, confession is good for the soul, and I have to confess I started very late. I'm talking, of course, about losing my virginity, which I did in this very city to a beautiful girl. Well, in fact, I'll be honest, I didn't lose it. I misplaced it. I came back.
Charles challenged.
It's a glorious story, but lose twice.
Yes, you lost too much there. So correct challenge, Gyles. 44 seconds. Being a late... I nearly said a loose starter. Being a late starter, starting now.
A late starter Roy might be, but what a finish. I like to think that I am a walker myself. Indeed, I got a text to this effect this morning. Predictive texting isn't always reliable, so maybe they were something else. But I felt flattered at the time, because being a late starter in life is very good. And what I have learnt this evening is that it's better to be loved than to win. My wife has been telling me this for very many years. I thought on election night I would have learnt that. She announced to me, people don't like you, Gyles. That is why you're not just a late starter, you're a non-starter, darling. It's a little bit sad, but there it goes. I've now seen how it should be done. This marvellous man who's come here, we couldn't get Tom O'Connor. We're very happy to have this fellow here. He is glorious.
So with that magnificent flourish and with wonderful compliments to our guest here, Roy Walker, Gyles finished up in a strong position at the end, gaining that extra point for speaking as the whistle went. He's a few points ahead of equal in second place Tony Hawks and Fred MacAulay, but they were only 1 point ahead of a magnificent fourth place, Roy Walker. So we congratulate Gyles because you are actually the winner this week. Congratulations to Gyles Brandreth. Now, it only remains for me to say thank you to these four fine players of the game, Gyles Brandreth, Fred MacAulay, Roy Walker and Tony Hawks. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped me with the score and blown her whistle with such style when the 60 seconds have elapsed. We thank our producer, Katie Tyrrell. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game, and we are deeply indebted to this lovely audience in Derry, Londonderry, legendary, and who cheered us on our way magnificently. So thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye! Welcome to Just a Minute. It's Nicholas Parsons. And as the minute walls fades away, once more it's my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners from around the world, but to welcome four exciting, talented players of this game. And those four are, seated on my right, Paul Merton and Richard Herring, and seated on my left, Russell Kane and Gyles Brandreth. Please welcome all four of them. As usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me is Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me keep the score. She will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And we're going to begin the show this week with Richard Herring, and the subject is backseat drivers. Tell us something about those in this game, starting now.
I am a very bad backseat driver. I'm with my first wife at the moment. I like to call her that to keep her on her toes. And whenever she's driving, I'm always commenting, telling her to get out of the middle lane and go over to the left to let people go past. It's terrible. They should really have I want a dual control, really, like a driving instructor has, so I can brake the car and drive it forwards and veer off in one direction when I feel she's going wrong. And sometimes she just speeds up too much and I get scared. So I tell her, please, slow down. I love you very much. I don't want us to die here together. Please. I can't think of anything else to say anyway. Shut me up.
Gyles, yes.
I'm sorry, there was a repetition of please.
There
was indeed, yes. A point to you, Gyles, for a correct challenge. 27 seconds available. Backseat drivers starting now.
In the 1960s, during my gap year in the United States of America, I met Sonny Liston, the big bear. And this man had a reach of 68 inches, 123 centimeters. He could actually sit in the back seat and drive, literally. He took me hitchhiking. It was very exciting indeed. Nonetheless, my friend...
Gyles Brandreth, speaking of the whistle win, gained that extra point. And Gyles, we're with you to begin. The subject is a lovely one, boiling the perfect egg. Will you tell us something about that? Your culinary experience will come into it, I'm sure, starting now.
I wonder, Nicholas, if you saw the film that I made for the One Show about the great Victorian artist Augustus Leopold Egg. This famous painter, whose work is represented at Tate Britain, died in Algiers taking a bath in the desert. The water was far too hot, being heated from below. He was a perfect gentleman in every way, but he dozed off amidst the suds, and consequently was boiled to the end of his days. Painting the perfect egg, boiling the perfect egg. This was the painting.
Russell challenged.
Ed instead of egg.
Oh, yes. Well, listen, Russell.
The deviation from language, I suppose.
To Russell, I'm ready to concede anything.
Uncle Charles! He forces me to dress as Agamemnon backstage.
You're lucky it was backstage.
There's something rather Greek about Gyles, I must say.
Well, like a kebab. Expect to find him lying in the street at 4:30 in the morning. Something
Russell, you had a correct challenge. You take over the subject.
Yeah.
And there are 25 seconds available, boiling the perfect egg, starting now.
The best way to boil the perfect egg might be by throwing it on the face of a red politician and watching it sizzle there as he's embarrassed. John Prescott springs to mind, who had an egg thrown in his face and he returned.
Gyles challenge.
Face repetition of.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
There you have a point for a correct challenge, Gyles.
Thank you.
And you have 14 seconds, boiling the perfect egg, starting now.
What you do is you take a saucepan, fill it with water, and bring it to the boil gently. Then you pop your egg into this lovely solution, letting it bubble nicely, adding a touch of salt, a bit of pepper, and that soupçon of vinegar.
So Gyles Brandreth was speaking of the whistle and gained that extra point. So he's got 2 points at the end of the round. Russell's got 1. The others have yet to score. And Russell, we'd like you to begin the next round. The subject is personal grooming. Obviously, you've given great attention to it before you came on the show this evening. But will you talk on the subject starting now?
There's nothing wrong with personal grooming for gentlemen. Often we can be criticised if we take too much pride in our personal grooming, but just enough can be attractive to a certain type of woman. Don't get me wrong, there's still the generation of women that like a man to be a proper bloke, upstanding, quiet, kind, maybe even a bit dirty, but thankfully there's a new team of young ladies coming through who do like a man that's thinner than them, that likes to sob over Twilight while he gets his hair straightened. Thank God for that. There are people that like emotionally needy men with personal grooming, and as it comes to body hair, I will admit that I shave my chest. There we are. I have sculpted my abs. I have manscaped my body.
Challenge.
It was the third man, and we had 2 men earlier.
Manscaped, is it?
No, we had 2 men earlier.
Did we?
And then
I don't remember. Uncle Gyles, you must be more discreet.
Different rules in hospitality for some people. All I got was a cup of coffee.
So Gyles, a correct challenge. 20 seconds available. Personal grooming starting now.
I was very lucky to get to know Cliff Richard when I was quite youthful, and he introduced me to the importance of moisturising, which I have done ever since. And in fact, I was the person who advised Nicholas Parsons to take this up when already the great man was in his early 70s. And nonetheless, his cheeks became pink and beautiful as a result of personal grooming.
So Gyles Brandreth was speaking of the whistle and gained that extra point, which I wish I could take away from him for the malicious things he was saying about me. Right. Paul, we'd like you to begin the next round. We'd like to hear from you, actually. What to give somebody who already has everything? That's the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
Antibiotics.
Russell, you challenge first.
I think there might have been a pause after antibiotics. I mean, it was earned.
Yes,
But we're not allowed dramatic pauses,
We call it
unfortunately.
hesitation. So, Russell, you tell us something about what to give somebody who already has everything, starting now.
When I was little, I used to fantasize about having everything, and that manifested itself by saying, imagine if you could have one thing from every page of the Argos catalogue. And that, to me, was my ultimate dream, to own all of that. And if I did have all of that in my possession...
Gyles' challenge.
All of that.
Yeah,
all of that.
repeated.
All of that.
It's going nowhere, to be honest.
Gyles, another correct challenge and 34 seconds for you on what to give somebody who already has everything, starting now.
What to give somebody who already has everything is a second copy of the Bible. The good book contains the wisdom of the world within it. A little sleep, a touch of slumber, some folding of the hands to rest.
Paul, challenge.
Wisdom of the world.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of science in there, is there?
No, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom, but I don't think all the wisdom of the world
all
is
the
there.
wisdom.
Well, we could argue about that. I have the Archbishop of Canterbury on the other line at the moment. He's a new man. I think he'd like to have a word. And indeed, look who's coming in. Yes, it is the Chief Rabbi, Nicholas, who'd like a word.
I'm not going to argue about it, but Paul had a very valid point. There's no science in the Bible.
I'm happy to let God be my judge in the long term, but in the short term, of course, Nicholas, I bow to your...
Sarcasm will get you anywhere. Paul, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You have a correct challenge, and you have 21 seconds. Tell us something about what to give somebody who already has everything.
Book tokens are usually a good idea because the person can decide that they're going to buy a books.
I feel there was a hesitation before the repetition of a book that he changed to plural to try and disguise
Richard,
the
do you
fact.
have a correct challenge?
I think I committed all the sins in one go, though, I think. Hesitation,
15 seconds are still available. Richard, what to give somebody who already has everything, starting now?
What to give someone who already has everything is a punch in the face, because they should share their stuff around with everybody else. They've already got everything. Share it out. Give it to someone else.
Russell, challenge.
I might get away with it.
Repetition of share.
Yes. So you've got in there with the correct challenge, Russell. 6 seconds are still available. What to give somebody... I don't know if that was you're reacting to Russell's body movements.
Well,
No,
it might be
it's-
that 6 seconds has always meant something special to you.
Paul deserves a bonus point for that. Russell, what to give somebody who already has everything, starting now?
It is, of course, logically impossible to give someone something if they already have everything, as we don't yet know what everything is.
Russell Kane, speaking as the whistle went. Gain that extra point. He's moved forward on our leader, Gyles Brandreth. He's just ahead of Paul, Merton and Richard Herring in that order. Gyles, we're back with you to begin. The subject now is cruising along the Mekong River.
Are you sure you want to give this one to Gyles?
Why not? He does it everywhere else.
You're looking suitably tense, Gyles. And you have the subject, 60 seconds, starting now.
As the vulgar reception to your introduction has made clear, you and I, Nicholas, are well known for cruising. Fortunately, neither of us has yet been arrested. The cruise that I have recently returned from was indeed along the Mekong Delta. And the joy of it was this. Cruising for me is not an amusing idea. Being tossed about on an ocean with 5,000 other people suffering from norovirus is not my idea of a happy holiday.
Richard Challenge.
I think it was a repetition of not my idea twice. I think we said twice.
Yes, it's not my idea. And also, I've objected to that thing about me cruising. I've worked on cruise ships, but I haven't actually, in the vulgar sense, cruised. But cruising along...
A public denial is always the first mistake.
Richard, you have a correct challenge. Cruising along the Mekong River, 34 seconds, starting now.
Cruising along the Mekong River is something I'm unlikely to do, as I have no idea where the Mekong River is. But I'm sure if I were to cruise along the Mekong River, I would spend a lot of time beating my chest and saying, Mekong, and annoying my wife, because I always like to make the same jest all the time whenever I'm on holiday. Recently, I was in Venice, and I kept making the same...
Gyles Challenge.
Deviation, Venice is 3,822 miles from the Mekong Delta.
But I was about to say that I'm about to take a cruise from Venice to the Mekong River. That was my next... It is possible. on a gondola.
Perhaps you're going to compare it to cruising along the Mekong
No,
River.
because he's told us he'd never been to the Mekong River and didn't know where it was.
Yes, he did.
Well,
Let's see if we can let God decide, Nicholas. If Gyles is right, God can strike me down dead now, and if he's wrong, then it's my turn.
You have 15 seconds to continue, Richard, on cruising along the Mekong River, starting now.
I imagine that cruising along the Mekong River is very similar to being in the film Apocalypse Now, where there will be people in the bushes waiting to shoot you and bomb you. There'll be men on surfboards. I don't know where the Mekong River is. How about it?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, definite
Terrible
hesitation.
deviation. Our listeners around the world, particularly in the Mekong Delta, will be shocked.
Paul, you've got in with 5 seconds to go on this subject. Cruising along the Mekong River, starting now.
A lot of us don't go to the Mekong River because we know that Gyles Brandreth is cruising there. I wouldn't want to be part of such a scene.
So Paul Malcolm speaking to the whistle when gained. That extra point is now equal with Russell Kane in second place behind Gyles Brandreth and well ahead of Richard Herring. Russell, we're back with you to begin, and the subject is Evil in War. Tell us something about that great man in this game, starting now.
Evelyn Waugh is one of the finest English novelists ever to have lived. His works begin with Decline and Fall and Scoop, light satirical works that skip along, and finish with darker, brooding works like The Love...
Gyles Challenge.
The third works.
Yeah.
I know.
Which was?
If I could tell you...
A Handful of Dust.
A Handful of Dust. It might have been Black Mischief.
No, yeah, maybe.
Have you two
52.
finished?
Sorry.
So have you finished your conversation?
Send him home.
Right, Gyles, you have 50 seconds.
Yes, very much so.
Evelyn Waugh is with you, Gyles. 50 seconds starting now.
One of the curious things about Evelyn Waugh is that his first wife was also called Evelyn, so that when you met them, it was Evelyn and Evelyn Waugh together for the evening.
Well, that's got to be repetition, hasn't it? I mean, Evelyn and Evelyn.
We love the joke. I wish I could give you a bonus point for it. 42 seconds. With you, Gyles, still on Evelyn Waugh, starting now.
All this fuss about sleeping together, personally...
Russell Challenge.
There was a hesitation after an implication of coitus.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Evelyn Waugh is with you, still, Russell?
Yeah.
Not still, but again, back with you. 37 seconds, starting now.
Evelyn Waugh was, of course, hardly ever introduced as his partner had been called Evelyn. She was called She Evelyn. They were introducing...
I'm still going.
Challenge.
I went into introducing.
Has a bit of a hesitation.
That was a bit of a hesitation.
come on.
So, Richard, you've got the subject now, Evelyn Waugh. 30 seconds are still available, starting now.
I hate Evelyn Waugh because when I was a kid, my favourite programme was called Al Fresco. It was on Channel 4 at the same time as Brideshead Revisited, written by Evelyn Waugh originally. He didn't write the TV thing, obviously. That would be
Russell
insane.
Challenge.
That was a mistake. I buzzed in for right when it was written. But my thumb just went. I'm so passionate about the subject. I had a literary spasm in my digit, and I apologise.
So an incorrect challenge.
Yes.
Well owned up. 19 seconds, still with you, Richard, on Evelyn Waugh, starting now.
One of the fascinating things I know about Evelyn Waugh is that his first wife was also called Evelyn Waugh. They were called Evelyn.
Russell Challenge.
Well, she became Evelyn Waugh.
Yes.
She started as Evelyn Gardner.
That's true.
Hey, I'm in a corner here. I'm going to punch. It's my one chance to show off.
It's a good way for us to rack up some points between the two of us.
Quid
pro quo.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I was being pedantic, but sometimes you can get away with that in this game, so I took a punt and I thought I'd see what would happen.
Well, you were incorrect, unfortunately.
Thank
right.
you.
So, Richard, another point, 13 seconds, Evelyn Waugh, starting now.
I wonder if they only got married because they were both called Evelyn. Was this his chat-up line? I used to know a girl called Shola, and I always said she should marry me because my surname is Herring. I thought that would be a good match. Also, she was a very attractive woman. I hoped she'd fall for it, and maybe the same thing.
So, Richard Herring was then through the whistle win. Gained an extra point. And he's now moving forward. He's 2 points behind the leader, Gyles Brandreth. Richard Herring, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is now short, puff, and flaky.
Old college chums.
But would you talk on that subject if you can. 60 seconds starting now.
When Disney came up with the Snow White film, what many people don't know is there were several other suggested names for the 7 dwarves. Short, Puff and Flaky were 3 of them. Short was particularly diminutive, even for a midget, and Flaky had eczema, so that was why he got his nickname. I can't imagine why they wanted to call him Puff. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe we could ask.
All right, Paul challenge.
He smoked a pipe.
Paul, you got a challenge within the rules of just a minute.
No, it wasn't a challenge. It was just additional information.
So he gets a point for an incorrect challenge. 40 seconds still available, Richard. Short, Puff and Flaky starting now.
Short, Puff and Flaky, I believe, are all types of pastry. And as you can see, looking at me here in the studio tonight, you will know I love pastries of all kinds.
Giles challenge.
Pastry and pastries.
Yeah, I think it was an incorrect challenge.
Yes,
He finished it off, changed pastry into pastries very deftly.
Yes.
Pastry
So
and
another
pastry.
point
And can
to
I
you,
say,
Richard.
he carries a little weight very attractively.
Do you flirt with everyone who comes on the show, Giles?
No, I've known you now for 45 years. And it's not crossed my mind once, actually.
This is what happens when there's no women on the show.
I don't know that Trudy really takes that as a compliment.
Sorry, Trudy.
And neither do I.
Richard,
Yeah,
you have another point with
Yeah.
an incorrect challenge.
Yeah.
32 seconds are still available. Short, Puff and Flaky.
Yeah.
Starting now.
My favourite of all the pastrified goods is flaky stuff of that kind. I've got nothing left to say.
That's got to be a bit of a hesitation there.
Yeah, but also I think a deviation from English.
Yeah.
Pastrified.
It was both a hesitation and a deviation. It was a devastation.
Yeah.
Right, Russell, you've got in with 28 seconds on Short, Puff and Flaky starting now.
Short, Puff and Flaky would be excellent name for hip-hop artists. MC Short, DJ Puff and Flaky. In fact, in the hip-hopping world...
Giles,
Hip-hop, I think.
I said
yes.
hip-hopping world.
Giles, another point to you.
Yes,
18
maybe.
seconds
Bit of a-
on Short, Puff and Flaky starting now.
I was intrigued by what Richard was telling us because I thought Huey, Dewey and Louie, the children of the sister of Donald Duck, were originally going to be called Short, Puff and Flaky. And that is the origin of that connection with that old studio back in Hollywood in the 1930s. However, listening to this maestro here...
Well, at the end of that round, Gyles Brandreth was speaking as a whistle, gained that extra point. He's increased his lead, but only slightly. Richard got a lot of points in the round. Richard Herring, he's moved up into a strong second place. Then it's Russell Kane, and trailing a little is Paul Merton. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject is a model village. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I find model villages a little bit boring. I think it's the tiny houses and the attempt to represent real life in a smaller scale. However, if you see something that's actually moving, like perhaps a model village that has a train running through it, or perhaps...
Giles.
A repetition of perhaps.
Yes. So, Giles, another point to you.
Absolutely.
And there are 45 seconds, and the subject, a model village, starting now.
Claudia Schiffer took me to her home village near Wuppertal, and I was excited to find that it was full of models. Giselle Bunchen was there with Heidi Klum, and they played the most extraordinary games. Naomi Campbell invited me in this model village to indulge in some wrestling with her in mud.
Richard Challenge.
No, you just did. None of this happened. I think we've got to have them taken away in section. This is insanity. It's just deviation from any kind of truth.
We do go off into the realms of fantasy in this show on occasions, Richard, and so it's difficult for me to judge in a way because
It says model village.
Yes, it does say model village.
Model village.
It made sense. It was logical.
It does. Well, it made sense. Can I tell you? I know it seemed mad at the time. It didn't make sense to my wife, but Naomi and I, it made sense to us.
Are you confessing to your own bunga party here? More scandal?
So I'm not sure where I should give the point on this.
I think give them to charity. Some poor devil needs them.
1 point to Charity, but I didn't know she was playing, actually. Right, Gyles, I think you get the benefit of the doubt, and you have 27 seconds on a model village starting now.
One of the most attractive model villages I know is near Beaconsfield. It's called Beaconscott, and there you do see beautiful...
Repeated C when he got flattered by the applause of a woman in the audience.
But I noticed you are working that woman in the audience with your foot. You made him do that.
I was surprised that Heidi Klum had actually turned up, but it's very sweet of her to have followed me here all the way from Wuppertal.
So, Richard, correct challenge. You have a point. You have 20 seconds. Tell us something about a model village starting now.
What I love about model villages is when you go there and there is a model village in the model village. And then if you look at that model village, sometimes there's a model village inside that model village as well. And then an even smaller model village that goes down and down.
Paul challenge.
No, you were drunk. I mean, you can't keep reducing that many times. Very quickly you get into microscopic.
It's definitely deviation.
Yes.
You've gone too far, Richard. I'm sorry.
I was going to get into an inch. I won't get a chance. But the interesting philosophical point that you then realise maybe you're in a model village yourself, and they keep going down. But then you're not the end one. There's one above you. So you missed out on some interesting philosophy there. Would made everyone think. Thank you.
You're working the audience very well, Richard.
With this pedal.
But it was an incorrect.
A visual joke just for you.
The visual joke was then that, for the sake of our listeners, that Richard pumped his foot like that as if he was working...
And I went up in the air.
Audience. But he was working Paul, and Paul suddenly rose up in his chair. It wasn't really very funny, but it's all...
Not now it's been explained on teletext.
I need to tell our listeners why we have these unexpected rounds of applause and laughter.
Exactly, because they usually don't expect that from just a minute, do they?
Paul, correct challenge to you.
Yes.
You have a model village, it's back with you. Oh, there are only 9 seconds left, starting now.
Milton Keynes was built very much as a model village back in the 1960s. It was developed by the corporation in that area to attract people from the East End. At
the end of that round, Paul was speaking of the whistle. Wendy's gained an extra point. He's moved forward equal in third place. They're behind Richard Herring, who's 3 points behind our leader, Giles Brandreth, as we move into the final round. You are a lovely audience. And it's Giles, it's actually your turn to begin. So the subject is something I think you can talk about, a tongue lashing. A tongue lashing, 60 seconds, starting now.
Just as a Swiss kiss is a French one through which you yodel with a slight aftertaste of Emmental, so a tongue lashing is a vile, vicious, cruel attack, a verbal flurry. When I first appeared in this studio 45 years ago, I played the part of a young policeman in a radio drama. My only line was this: that was the chair Schmidt sat in when he was shot. It did not come out quite right, and consequently I got a tongue lashing from the producer, who was an old friend of Nicholas Parsons, and had learned from him what tongue lashing could be all about. Because this host of our program may seem to you to be benign, but tongue lashing is his speciality. When he is not doing whipping in the same way as he does 50 Shades of Grey, this gross man comes and tongue lashes the rest of us. He is lovely out here, but backstage,
challenge somebody, please.
It's all true. Send help.
Richard, you're challenged.
He won't let us go home. We're in, night in, night out.
It's a defamation of character, Nicholas. I could not stand by for more than 40 seconds and listen to you being talked about like that.
I know, deviation. I know you've got a lot of laughs, but I've never tongue lashed anybody. Charles, you are not only incorrigible, you are utterly wicked. The way you give false impressions, put images in the minds of this audience here and the listeners around the world with all my 50 Shades of Grey and my tongue lashing and dump the Mekong River with those models and...
You've never had it so good, have you?
So where are we now?
Well, I don't know. Where are you?
Deviation.
Definite deviation.
Absolutely.
Right. Granted. Richard, you have deviation, a correct challenge. 10 seconds, a tongue lashing starting now.
When I was at school, I was quite a naughty little boy. I messed around in class, and I remember one day Mr. Habgood, the maths teacher, said to me, "Richard Herring, one day you're going to wake up and find that no one finds you funny anymore."
So, Richard Herring was then speaking as a whistle wind, gained that extra point. It's a very interesting result. In second place, we have an equal, which is Russell Kane and Paul Merton. A number of points behind our equal leaders, Gyles Brandreth and Richard Herring. A round of applause to our two winners. So it only remains me to say thank you to these four delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Richard Herring, Russell Kane and Gyles Brandreth. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped me with the score, blown her whistle with such aplomb when the 60 seconds elapsed. We're grateful to our producer, Katie Tyrrell. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. From me, Nicholas Parsons, and the team, and the audience, goodbye, and tune in the next time we play Just a Minute!